In this video, I'll show you step by step how to build a stunning personal portfolio website that has a stellar UI using modern web dev technologies like ReactJS and TailwindCSS. This portfolio will include a beautiful responsive navbar, a cool background that makes you feel like you are in space, an About Me section to promote yourself, a dynamic skills section that will list out all of your technical abilities, a place to demonstrate all of your impressive projects, and a get in touch area to be able to hear new opportunities. Also, the website will be full of cool animations that will leave your recruiter very impressed. Before we get into the video, if you're interested in learning more about the most powerful JavaScript library in the world, check out my newly released ReactJS course for beginners. This course will take you from beginner to advanced in carefully structured modules, and it will include quizzes and other cool resources that will help you master React. Right now, we are in early bird pricing, so if you use the code EARLY100 or click the link below, you will get 20% off. Now that we got that out of the way, let's start building this. Okay everyone, so let's get started. I have here a folder I opened inside of VS Code. I will be using VS Code for this video as for all of my other videos as well. And I'll be using npm as my package manager. So I want to open up here a terminal and I want to run npx create vite. This is going to generate a Vite application in React, and I'm going to give a project name as my current directory. I don't want to create another folder inside of the folder that I'm already inside of. I'll press enter. Then we'll choose our library or framework. I'll choose React, obviously. And we can choose TypeScript, we can choose JavaScript. Since this is a portfolio, I'm gonna be honest, if you want to choose JavaScript or TypeScript, it doesn't really matter. The reason for that is because we're not really interacting with users that much, right? We're not writing forms, we're not doing anything that is too complicated. So writing your code in JavaScript is totally fine for this case. I would highly recommend using TypeScript in most cases, but I also know that some of you guys might not know TypeScript, but if you know TypeScript, you definitely know JavaScript. So that's why I'm going to be choosing JavaScript for this project. So I'm going to press enter here for JavaScript, and it is going to ask us to run npm install to install all the packages in the package.json. And when that's done, I want to run npm run dev. So it finished, as you can see over here. So I'm going to run npm run dev, and we now have our project running on the local host 5173. I'm going to switch to our browser and I'm going to go to that link, and you can see that our project is running. So we want to build a beautiful portfolio, and that's going to require a lot of moving parts and a lot of styling and UI. So we're going to be actually using a couple different libraries that are going to help us create that UI. I highly recommend using libraries such as ShadCN or Radix UI so you can facilitate you writing your UI. You don't need to know at this point in the industry, right? In the web dev lifetime, you don't need to know how to make every single UI thing, because most likely you will be using a library for UI. So using different libraries that facilitate you writing your styling is very important. We are using two different libraries here that are going to help us. The first one, obviously, it's TailwindCSS. And we need to install TailwindCSS to make our project work. So we want to go to our terminal again, and we want to run npm install. And I want to install TailwindCSS and also the TailwindCSS Vite plugin. So this is the new version of Tailwind. It's version 4. This video won't work for version 3, but it will work for version 4, and I highly recommend you using version 4. So after this is installed, all we need to do to make Tailwind work in our project is we have to import the plugin on our Vite config. So I'm going to say import Tailwind CSS from at, and I have to put this in a string, at Tailwind CSS Vite, and I'll just put the plugin directly over here. Now I'm going to close this up. I don't know why I didn't paste it, but I'll close this up and we're going to save it. And the second thing I need to do to make Tailwind work in my project is I need to go to the index.css file, which we're going to basically revamp this whole thing, and we'll say Tailwind CSS, just like that. If you don't do this, then you won't be able to use Tailwind in your project. So we're going to also delete the app.css file. I'm not going to be using that for this tutorial. We're just going to keep all of our global theme definition and styling instead of this CSS file over here, because most of the styling will be done with Tailwind using class names, right? So I also want to do one more thing with the vidconfig. I want to set up an alias for our path names. So for example, you see this source folder over here. All of our project is going to be inside of here. So imagine I made a component here. Let's call it component.jsx, right? And in our app component over here, if I wanted to import this component, instead of doing import component from, and then I put the direct path like this, right? Whatever, I want to be able to just use the @ alias over here, and this will tell us that we're inside of the source folder. So I can just literally say @ and then component.jsx or whatever. You know what I mean? I just want to set an alias for the source folder, and this is very helpful in many different situations. To do this in Vite, you just come over here, you give a resolve value like this, and then you give an alias. And the alias we're going to give is an @ symbol. This is the most commonly used alias. And to make it represent the source folder, we're literally just going to say path dot, no, we need to import path. So I'm going to import path from path, and I want to say path dot resolve, and I'm going to put the directory name by saying dir name like this, and I'm just going to put the source folder as the actual path. Perfect. This should make it such that we could import that component using the @ symbol instead of directly referencing the source folder. Now we need to install the packages that we're going to be using in this project. So what I want to do is I actually want to go ahead and run the command npm install, and I want to install first and foremost Lucid React. What Lucid React will do, it will give us access to a bunch of different icons we're going to be using in this website. So we want to use an icon library, and I like Lucid React for this. Now, the second thing we want to install is React Router DOM. So React Router DOM, or React Router, is obviously going to be the routing library we're going to be using in this, but you could go ahead and use something else like 10-stack router or whatever you want to use. Now, we're only going to have routes for the main page and for a 404 page. So the thing is, this is going to be a single page app in the sense that it's just going to be a single page. We're just going to navigate through the page and scroll down, as you saw in the demo. However, we do want to handle the case in which there's someone tries to go to a route that doesn't exist. So to do that, we're going to be using React Router. Now, the last thing I want to install directly through here is I want to install Tailwind Merge. And you'll see what this is, but basically it will allow us to create a util function that will allow you to combine class names in Tailwind so that you don't have to keep worrying about writing your entire class name in one single line, especially if it's a big one. You can just combine them. And it's pretty simple, and I recommend always installing it when you are working with a Tailwind project. The next thing I want to install is we're going to be using Radix UI for the toaster. You can use another toaster library if you want to as well. That's the only thing from Radix UI I'm going to be installing. And to install it, we literally just say npm install. I'm going to install Radix UI React Toast. And then I also want to install some of the other packages that are used in the Radix UI React Toast file. We're actually just going to copy the component that Radix UI provides to us and paste it into our project, so we don't really have to worry a lot about writing the code for the toaster. And I think the last one we need to install is the CLSX as well. So we're just going to install this. We don't have to worry about it. It's just for when we add the toaster, we are able to use the component provided to us by Radix UI. Perfect. Now we can start working on our project. So the first thing I want to do is I want to remember how we deleted the app.css. I want to delete this because if we don't do that, then it will keep bugging us. You can see all the styling is gone, which is totally fine. But I want to start out by defining the routes for our app, right? So in our app.tsx, I want to, and I'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better, I want to delete everything that is over here. And inside of this page, and I'll delete this as well, and also this, and probably the use state as well, I want to define the router for our app. And to do that, I'm going to call a browser router from React Router DOM. Now we'll have to define the routes inside of it. So I'm going to define here a routes component from React Router DOM as well. And like I said, we're just going to have two routes. We're going to have the route for the main page, the actual portfolio. And we're going to have a route for the any other page, which will result into a component called the not found page. And we can customize that however we want. To define the index route, we'll just pass index over here, and it will assume that the path is the index path. And we have to pass an element. Now, I'm going to create here a folder called pages. Now, this pages will only have two of them. Like I said, it will have the home.jsx, and it's also going to have the not found.jsx. We're going to make both pages. Now for the home, we're just going to define an export component called home. And at the bottom, I'll just, for now, return a div. Now we're going to import this home component over here by saying home and choosing the correct path, and it will auto import for us. And then for our not found, we'll do pretty much the same thing, but we'll call this a not found. And I'll write something over here like not found. Together with the home, I'll write home page or whatever. And then in our app.jsx, to define a not found page or not found route, we just give a path of an asterisk, and we make the not found path be the last route that we define. What this means is everything that hasn't been defined already, which in our case is just the home page, we haven't defined anything else, will default to this element component that we pass over here, which is exactly what we want, right? Any path that isn't one that we defined, we want to show the not found. We'll see that if I go back over here, the index path shows the home, but if I go to anything else, it should say not found. Perfect. Now, let's go back to our code over here, and I want to come to our home component and start with that first. So to start off with the home component, we want to structure this in a way such that we can first, and I'll put some space here, we first render the theme toggle, where we deal with adding that little button on the top right, which will allow us to change from dark to light mode. Then we also want to below this, handle the background effects, meaning if you remember, we have the little particles moving around in the page representing stars, and also we have the meteor shower that happens in the background as well. Now, obviously that's not necessary, but it gives a really cool aesthetic to the website that I think you guys will really enjoy, and it will make your website stand out a lot. Now, below this, we're gonna add the navbar, right? The navbar is just going to be that thing on the top where we can click on the different links to navigate to the different parts of the portfolio. And then below this, we'll have the main content. Now, the main content is just going to be, again, like the hero section, the about section, the skills section, the projects, and so on. And then at the bottom, we're going to add a simple footer. So I want to show you guys this first so you guys understand how we're dividing this project. So I will start off with probably the background effects. I would say we should leave the theme toggle to the end, just because, or at least midway through the project, just because we don't have anything to test the theme yet. We don't have any styles yet, so it doesn't really make sense. But I do want to start out by adding some styling to this div. This is where we're gonna be the main page of our app. So I want to add some class names to this, and I'll make it as simple as possible. First of all, I want to set a minimum height of our page, so a minimum H screen to be the size of the screen, right? That's what I mean by that. Now, we want to also create some custom styling to our project. That means I want to add some custom colors and some custom elements that we will reuse in our project. We have a bunch of default class names that we can use from Tailwind, right? This is one of them, right? There's some styles that are applied for this, but we want to actually make some ones for ourselves that we define the styling for. This is extremely important for a variety of reasons. First of all, it adds a level of customization to our own website, but also When we define our own styles, we define our own colors, meaning we can easily define a version of those colors in light mode and a version of those colors in dark mode. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to come to our index.css, and I'm going to delete all of the styles that are here right now. So we're going to start by defining our theme. Now, with this theme that we're defining here, I'll give some different colors names that we're going to define, and we will associate their values with certain colors that we define for both the light theme and the dark theme. So for example, we're going to define a color that is going to be a class name when we want to apply this color for borders, right? If we want to apply a border into anything in our project, we're going to call the class name called color border. Now we'll pass an HSL color to it, and we'll define a variable called border. When we define the base layer for our project, we will define the color for this border variable, both for the light and the dark theme. Now we'll do the exact same thing, but for other parts of our project that we might want to have different colors. For example, we might want to have a color for the background that changes depending on the theme, right? So I'm going to change this to background, and I'll define a variable called background. Now we'll do one as well for the foreground, right? The things that go in front of the background. And especially with text, I'm going to define a color primary, just so we know what a primary color is. And I'll define the color primary, and I'll do the same thing for the color secondary, right? It's just going to be the secondary color that we have. Now, I also want to maybe not call it secondary, actually. Maybe I just want to create the color for the foreground from the primary. So I'll say primary foreground. Now, obviously, all of this will make more sense as we start using it. So if you're not understanding that much, I wouldn't worry about it. But I'm going to come here and say foreground, just like this, and it should be good to go. Now, I'm also going to add a color for the card. We're going to have cards, right? Especially for the skills section and so on. So we're going to add here one called color card and a variable called card. Now, we're also going to have a bunch of animations. And what we can do is, instead of just defining colors, right, we can define the actual animations. Now, the first animation we're going to have is going to be, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste all the animations we're going to want to have in our project. Now, there are a couple of them just for the different items that we have, especially the star background, the meteor, and so on. So I'll just paste them over here, and I'll explain to you guys what each of them does, right? So the first few is a couple animations that we might want to apply to our main sections, including our text and so on. When we go into our website, we want the text to suddenly fade in, right? If you remember from the demo, when I refresh the page, it fades into existence, giving this feeling that you're joining the website. So for that, we're going to have the fade in effect and different versions of it where we change the delay, meaning the time it takes for the animation to be completed, by this variable over here, how long in seconds it takes for it to be done. We created 4 different versions of it, and we might want to use each of them in different parts, just in case, right? And we also created here the general fade-in animation that we apply to each of these different versions of animations, right? So you see, the fade-in is just we're fading into this screen, and then we have different versions of it where it takes longer. So we also have a float animation that we're going to apply to the hero section, and we have this pulse subtle animation, which basically will keep the stars in the background slightly pulsating, as if they are real stars. If you look at the stars in the sky at night, they slightly pulsate, right, because of the light. So we want to do this, and we want to run it forever so that our website constantly has them in the background. So this is just us defining the animation names. We're not really applying them yet, but it's important for us to define them like this. And then obviously the meteor animation, we're using the names here: meteor, fade in, pulse subtle, and float. But we haven't created the keyframes for them yet. We're assuming we're going to create the keyframes in a second, but you'll see that the meteors are just those little meteors that keep falling, right? And they appear at random places. You guys will see how we generate that, but they appear and they keep falling in the background. Now, to actually define the animations, I'm going to paste the keyframes over here. I'm only pasting this part just because I think it's easier for me to explain without actually writing it, since it's a lot of repeated code. Later on, obviously, I'll be writing everything and showing to you guys. But for the keyframes, we're basically saying how the animation should act. So for the float, we're just going to change the transform, right? In the beginning, the middle, and the end, and we're translating it back and forth. For the pulse subtle, all we're doing is the stars in the background, they're little dots, right? White dots in the background. And we're just making such that if you look at the pulse subtle, it takes 4 seconds to ease in and out of this animation, and it runs forever. So every 4 seconds, the opacity of the star will go from 0.8 to 1, meaning that it's constantly slightly pulsating in the screen, going from fully visible to slightly visible. And that's how we make that animation. Now for the fade-ins, it's just we're gonna apply this to like text and images and so on. So we just wanna get it from being completely invisible, see opacity being 0, to being visible, and also basically making it such that it will move from the left to the right, right? We're fading in. And finally, we have here the meteor. And the meteor is a bit different. We kind of want it to go down in the screen in a diagonal manner. So that's how we're defining with this rotate function over here, and we're translating throughout the screen, right? And obviously, all of this will make sense when we start generating the meteors as well. So now we're pretty much done with our theme, which means now we're going to have to define the base layer of our project and what each color represent. So see the colors that we represented over here, see these variables over here. The way we define their values is we're going to come down here and we're going to define a layer called base. And in this base layer, we're going to define the root version and the dark version, right? So for each color that we have, for example, we have here the background color, right? Let's start with that one. We'll copy this variable name and we'll come over here and we'll define what is the color for the background. On the root, this is the light version. So we're using HSL to define the actual colors, but you could use RGB, you could use hexadecimals and so on. But the background for this is gonna be this on light mode. And if I wanted to define it in dark mode, I would just come here to the dark version and I would just add a background as well, but with a different color. Now we have a color for the background in the light theme and a color for the background in the dark theme. So obviously I'm not gonna manually come over here and write all of the different colors. So I will just copy and paste the colors we're gonna be using in this project, and I'll be back in a second. Perfect. As you can see, I just added the light colors and the dark colors for all of the different variables that we created over here. If I forgot any of them, I'll notice later on and I'll just come back and add the colors, but I think we got all of them done. And this is pretty much how we are going to apply those colors. Now, what we want to do is we want to create what is known as utility classes, meaning we're going to create class names that we want to use to apply some sort of styling in Tailwind CSS. So we could obviously use the mean age screen class for applying classes that are defined by Tailwind CSS, for example. But if I wanted to create a mean, I don't know, Y screen, I don't even know what that means, but I wanted to create a class name that I want to apply some styling when I call it. How do I do that? Well, it's actually pretty simple, because if you think about it, a class name is just a class, right? It's just a class that you were creating. But with Tailwind, to make it actually act in conjunction with the other class names that you create, you want to create what is known as a utility class. So for example, we'll start with the utility container. That's the most basic class we're going to create, right? So it's a container. We might want to use multiple different parts of our website. So I'll come over here and I'll say utility, and I'll define a container. And then in here, I would want to only apply two things to it. I want to apply a margin inline to be auto, and I want to apply a padding inline to be 2rem. That's what I want. And now anywhere in my page, I could just call this container and it would work. Perfect. I also want to make this container be responsive, and especially with this, I think it's important for us to add some media queries that will help us adjust the maximum width of our page and our elements depending on the size of the screen. So I'm going to actually just add all of these media queries that I created over here for different screen sizes, and you can adapt however much you want, but I think this makes it look pretty good because it's responsive on a big screen and also in a small screen. So that's how you create a utility class. Now we're going to create a couple other ones. For example, we're going to create here a utility class for the text glow. We're going to apply, in this case over here, relative, and we're going to add a text shadow of 0, 0, 10 pixels, and we'll add a color with an RGBA so we can add some opacity. And I'll say 167, 139, and 250, and I'll make the opacity be 0.5. So we want to add this text glow to a certain part of our website. So now we have that class being done. Now I'll create one for a card hover. Now when we have our cards in our page, I want to be able to hover through it. And I wanted to apply some sort of transition. Now the transition I want to apply is, I want to say transition, transform, duration, 300, and I want to add a hover to it, which I'll scale a card up if we hover it. So if you look in the demo, you'll see that when there's the little projects, right, I hover it and it becomes a little bit bigger just to give a little effect to it. I'll also add a hover here of a shadow large. Now, I just realized something. If you're new to TailwindCSS, you might not also know what this apply is. You notice that here we have two different styles. We have one that we apply through this apply thing, and we have one that we just literally just write the CSS style. If you want to add CSS styles, not Tailwind styles, you can write them like this. But if you want to apply a Tailwind-based style, like a class name, like we're doing here with relative, you can just use the apply thing. So in this one, we basically transformed all the combination of all of these Tailwind classes into one class name called card hover. But if we were to want to add other custom CSS, we could just apply them like this without using the apply keyword. So that's what it means. Now below this, we're going to create another one. We're going to call it a gradient border. And I want to apply relative. And also, I want the border to be rounded, have a border radius of medium size. Now for this, I'm going to add a background. The background is going to be a gradient, which will look pretty good. We're going to say to right. And I'm going to add an HSL color, right? Because remember, all of our colors have been defined through HSL. We're going to use a variable here. And this background gradient border that we're going to add is going to be applied to our cards. So whenever we have a card in our page, we're going to apply this class, meaning that we want to use as a color, in this case, one of the variables that we created, specifically the card variable, right? So we'll apply here the variable to be card, and we'll do the same thing as the other one. We could apply a different color here. I'm going to say as HSL card as well, but you could add a different color if you want to. Now here, I'm going to say background clip, and I'm going to say padding box, and I'm going to put the border to be 1 pixel solid transparent. Perfect. Now let's apply another utility. This utility, I'll actually just copy here the whole thing we just did. This utility, I'm going to call it the cosmic button, but you can call it whatever you want. The cosmic button is just the buttons we're going to be using in this page. If you noticed, I made a space themed portfolio, so that's why some of the stuff will be called with like space names, but you can just call it your whatever button you want to add. But we're using a cosmic button, and for this one, we're actually going to apply a good amount of styling to it. I want to apply a padding X of 6, a padding Y of 2. We're going to make the thing be full, right? Have a full rounded, full radius. We're going to put the BG to be primary. We're going to say text primary foreground. And if you've noticed, on this both cases over here, we're applying colors, right? BG, we're applying a color to the background. And text, we're applying a color to the text. But we used colors that we defined up here. We used primary and primary foreground. So since we defined those colors, we can now apply them this way. Perfect. Now I'm going to say font medium. I'm going to also say, I'll actually put some space here. I'm going to say transition all, duration 300. I'm going to add a hover effect of shadow, and I want to apply this specific shadow. It's going to be 0, 0, 10 pixels, and an RGBA of 139, 92, 246, and a 0.5 opacity, similar to the one we applied previously. Now below this, I also want to apply another hover. So I'm going to say hover. I want to scale up the button when we hover it. So every button will grow in size when we hover it. And when it's active, I want to set the scale to be 95. Perfect. Now we have this cool button that we can just apply this class name, and we don't have to reuse this whole bunch of class names every time we create that button. Now I want to create here a star, right? So the star is the little dots that we have in the background. We're going to apply some styling to it. So we'll say star over here, and we'll apply the following styles. So I don't want to make them relative. I actually want to make them absolute because they might appear different at any part of the page without referencing other elements in the page right there in the background. So I'm going to say absolute here. I want to make them a full circle. So I'm going to say rounded full, and I want to apply white to them. They are white, right? I don't think on light mode it makes sense to put the stars. So we're not even going to apply theme colors here, because what even is a black star, right? It doesn't make sense. So in this star, I only want to add one thing, which is, and I'll delete all of this. I'm going to add a box shadow to them, and I'll say 0, 0, 10 pixels. Actually, I'll just copy this. Actually, it doesn't make sense to copy because then it would be Tailwind colors. But yeah, so I'll say 10 pixels, 2 pixels here, and I'll say RGBA. I'll say 255 to make them white. So apply 255 to all of them. And then the opacity, I'll make it 0.4. Now we pretty much want to do the exact same thing to the meteor, but a meteor is not really just a rounded circle. It would change in format, right, to create the trail of the meteor. So I'm going to say absolute. I'm not going to say rounded full, so they're not a circle. And I'm not going to say BG white because I want the meteor to also switch colors. So what I'm going to say is I'm actually going to create a kind of a gradient. I'm going to say it's from BG linear to R. That's how you create a gradient in Tailwind. And I'll say it starts from being a white color via white to transparent. So they disappear as they move along, right? And I'm going to say rounded full at the end, which I already had before, but yeah. And also the color here, we're going to keep everything the same. I'm going to put this 5 pixels, and I'll make it 0.3 instead of 0.4. Great. Now we're almost done with all of our index.css, which I know it felt like forever, but we're basically writing a lot of code to prevent us from rewriting all of this code later on when we start building our project. So I understand that this you're not seeing what we're doing, but when we start applying it, it will become a lot faster and easier for you guys to understand. What we want to do now is we actually want to apply more styles to the base layer. We want to apply some styles that apply to everything. So inside of the base layer, I want to add an asterisk basically to apply to everything, and everything I want to apply the border. I want to have a border, and I'll apply the border with the color border, which is the color that we created. Then we want to remove this padding. I don't know why it was automatically applied, but I'll remove that. We want to apply something to the HTML document, and I want to basically make the whole HTML document have a smooth scroll. So I'll say scroll smooth, so that when we move through the pages and we click the links on the navbar, it has a smooth animation scrolling down to the elements. Then we'll add something to the body. Now, what we're going to apply here is we want to apply the background color that we created. We want to apply for everything the foreground color, and we want to add some transition colors as well with a duration of 300. Then at the bottom, I want to apply a font feature settings, and I'll apply rlig1, and I'll apply called 1. Now that's all we want to apply. The last thing I want to do is just add some very basic stylings to our root element. I'll just set the max width to be 100%. I'll set the margin to be 0 and auto. I'll apply the padding to be 0, because if you've noticed with some React projects, you need to apply a margin and a padding to 0, or else it will look really weird. We'll have some space in the sides. And then I'll set the text align to be center, because that's pretty much how we want to build our project. So perfect. I understand this is all empty and white, but we have just successfully created a lot of stylings that we're going to be using in our project. And we can start using it already in our home div. For example, I want to apply the color for the background. So I'm going to say BG background. I want to apply the text foreground color over here. So now I can say text foreground. And I also want to apply an overflow X to be hidden. And we won't see anything big because we are on light mode right now. But when we apply our themes, you'll see that it will switch. It might be good actually to already start applying the theme toggle, just so we can work our way through dark mode, just because I don't want to deal with this in light mode. I mean, we're making a light mode theme, but I'm not a kind of person who would use it. I prefer it to be dark. So we're going to create this theme toggle, which I think will really help through the development. So let's start that off. The theme toggle is going to be a component. So I'm going to create here a components folder. And in here, I want to create the theme toggle. Now inside of here, I want to export const theme toggle. And this component will actually be slightly simple. We want to return at the bottom just a button. And this button will have basically a sun as an icon if we want to go to light mode and we're in dark mode, and it will have a moon as an icon if we are currently in light mode. Now, the way we can differentiate if we're in light mode and dark mode is we're going to create here a state. It's going to be called isDarkMode. And we're going to create a function called isDarkMode so we can alter that value. Now, we can start this with being false, right? Because usually it will start in light mode, but you could set it to true as well if you want to start in light mode. Then inside of here, I'm going to say, is dark mode true? Because if it is, then I want to put the label to this button to be the sun icon from Lucid React, which is the icon library we installed. Now that should be automatic. So I already imported it. And if it's not dark mode, then it's light mode. I want to show the moon, and that's another icon as well. You'll see that we pretty much don't have anything showing up right now. Let me even see if there's any errors. No, it's just because we also haven't called the theme toggle. We'll call it over here, and we'll import this file. Actually, I'll just write it theme toggle so I can auto import. Perfect. Now you see this moon over here, because it's in light mode, it shows the moon. But when I click on it, we want to change it to the sun and also change the actual theme. Now I want to apply some styles to the icons. I want to say that the height of this icon will be 6. Also, I want to put it inside of a class name, right? So I want to put the height to be 6. I want to put the width to be 6. And I also want to make the color of it be yellow, right? Because we want to basically, it's a sun, so we want to make it yellow. So it looks like a sun. With the moon, we'll make it blue to give a really cool aspect to it. And we'll put blue 900. You'll see that now it becomes blue. Perfect. Now, how do we allow ourselves to click on it and switch the value? So I'm going to create here a toggle theme function. And what this function will do is it will check, okay, is dark true. So if it is dark mode, we want to do some stuff. If not, we want to do something else. The main thing right now we want to do is, if it's dark mode, I want to set is dark mode to be false, right? Because we just toggled it. If it is not, then we want to set it to true. And we'll pass this to the on click of this function. You'll see that now I can switch between them by just clicking on it, but it doesn't really apply any of the stylings. To apply the styling, what we want to do is we want to directly apply the dark class name that we defined over here. You see that we will have this dark class name applied to the root of our project if we want to be in dark mode. So what we have to do is, if we're not in dark mode, before we even change the state, I'm going to say document.documentElement.classList to access the list of classes in the document. We're going to add the dark class. And you'll see that when I do that, now the color switches to dark. But we don't have a way for us to switch it back. So we'll do the opposite in the above. We'll basically remove dark as an option. So when I click this, it now switches. Perfect. Now I want to make it such that, for example, if I switch to dark mode, when I refresh the page, it will remember that I prefer to stay in dark mode. So the way we're going to do this is through the local storage. So when we switch to dark mode, I want to say local storage dot set item, and I want to apply an item called theme, and I'll set it to dark. So we'll store this in the local storage, and even if we refresh the page, that value will still be there. Now we'll do the same thing with the other version, but we'll change this to light. And now you'll see that when we click this, it should store, right? If we come over here to application, we should see that on the local storage, this is the session storage. So in the local storage, there should be a theme and it's dark. And when I switch, it becomes light. But there's no way for we're not reading it right now when we load the component. To do that, we're going to have to use a use effect. So we're going to say use effect over here, and we're going to run this code right when the component renders. We're going to apply an empty dependency at the end, so we only run it once. And what I want to do is I want to get, right when the page renders, I want to get the stored theme to see if it's something different. So we're going to say local storage.get item, and we'll get the theme right when the page renders. Now, if the stored theme is equal to dark, then I'm going to set is to dark mode to true, and I'll again add the dark class name. If the one in the storage is light, then again I want to do the opposite, which is this over here. So you see that now, if I'm in light mode and I refresh this, still in light mode. But if I switch to dark mode and I refresh this, it will remember that it was supposed to be in dark mode. Including if I open another tab, it will still be in dark mode because it remembered it. Great. Now what we want to do is we just want to move that toggle button to its position, which is on the top right. And to do that, I will write a lot of class names to this button over here. So what I want to do is I want to create, I want to use the Tailwind merge library. So I'll create here in like a folder called lib, and I'll create a utils file. And in here, I want to basically create this function called cn, which means class name. And this class name function will use Tailwind merge to allow us to easily combine class names without really writing a lot of lines of class names in one single line, right? You know what I mean, right? So we'll import over here at the top the CLSX class from CLSX, and we'll also import the Tailwind merge function from Tailwind merge. And all this CN class is going to, or CN function is going to do is it's just going to return TW merge with CLSX, and we'll get from this the class names. So I'll say inputs over here, and I'll pass the inputs. Now, you don't really need to understand what this is, just because of the case that You'll reuse this same file every time you use Tailwind merge. But basically what this means is in our button over here, if I want to apply a lot of class names to it, right, multiple, I can use this cn function and basically pass a list of class names instead of just one huge string. For example, I'll pass the first list of class names. I'm going to say the buttons should be fixed. There's going to be a max SM of hidden. I'm going to set it to the top right, so top 5 and right 5. I'm going to set the Z to be 50, the padding to be 2. I'll also make it round, so I'm going to say rounded to be full, so it looks like a circle. And I want to add some transition colors and a duration of 300. Immediately you notice that from the size of my text on my code editor, this is already too big. It will start overflowing here. So with the cn function, I can actually just put a comma, and then I can start writing the rest of it down here. I can say, for example, I want to set a focus to it, and I'll set the outline to be hidden. Now, if I wanted to apply more styles, it would look a lot better in this case. Now we'll go over here and we'll refresh this, and it seems to be broken. My guess is that we didn't import the cn function. So I'll say import cn from @/lib/utils, and it should correctly import it. Let's see if it does. Yes, it does. So now we apply the light over here, and I can click on it and switch. Perfect. Now we have successfully created the theme toggle. So, and I realize I'm saying this wrong. It's not theme toggle, it's theme toggle, but I'm sorry, I'll just make this mistake a bunch of times accidentally. But yeah, so now we're pretty much done with that. Now that we're done with our theme toggle, let's add the background, right? So the background, I'm talking about both the star background with the little stars and also the particles that will appear in the background. So let's start with the star background. So I'm going to create a component, and I'm going to call it over here. We're going to say star background, and we're going to create that component in our components folder. So we'll say star background over here. And inside of this component, I want to export const star background, and we'll just return a div. Actually, we'll just return an empty fragment from now. Now I will import the star background. So I'll say import from @/ and then we go to components / star background, and we want to import the star background component. Now in this component, we want to return a div that will render both the stars and the meteors. So the stars, the way we're going to render it is we're actually going to create a list that is going to keep track of the stars. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say const stars, and I'll make it set stars, and it's going to be a state. Now, what is a star in this context? Well, a star is going to have the following structure. Actually, I'll make it into multiple lines. It is going to have an ID for the star, a size, an X and Y, an opacity, and an animation duration. That's what we want to keep track of. So this stars over here is going to be a list of objects that are going to contain each of these properties. So inside of this, we're going to create a function called generate stars. And this function, like the name suggests, it's literally just going to, when we join a page, right, when we join the website, is going to generate that stars. Now, the way I want to find out how many stars I want to put on my website is dependent on the size of the window, right? Because on smaller windows, we don't want to generate that many stars because then it doesn't make sense. And as the window of your computer or the device you're using increases, we want to add more. So we're going to do this little calculation. I'm going to create a variable called number of stars, and I'm going to set it equal to math.floor. And the reason we do math.floor is so we round it down. And we're going to say window.inner width to get the the width of the window times window.innerHeight to get the height of the window divided by 10,000. If you want to add more stars, more density of stars, if you want to, you could change this value, but I prefer it to be this way because I think it's a good amount. Now we're going to create a new list called new stars, and we're going to set it equal to an empty array. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop through the number of stars. So I'm going to create a for loop. I'm going to say for let I equal 0, I is less than number of stars, I plus plus. And we're going to loop through the amount of stars we want to have. And for each of the stars, we're going to push to this new stars array an object with an ID equal to the current index, a size that is going to be equal to math.random. So we get a random size, so they might be a little bit different. And we're going to multiply this times 3 and add 1. And what this will do is it will generate stars with a size between 1 and 4 pixels. So we have different sizes of stars, so it looks a little bit more realistic. Then we're going to add the X and the Y. If you remember, that's how we defined a star up here. And for the X, what we want to do is I want to set math.random to again get a random value times 100. And I'll do the exact same thing for the Y. Now, the X and the Y are the position of the stars. So when we do X and Y math.random times 100, we're basically, 100 is the percentage. So we're placing it anywhere in our viewport from 0 to 100%. So in any position, right? Now let's go for the opacity. I'm going to say opacity over here. And the opacity, we're going to say math.random. And we're going to multiply that times 0.5 and add 0.5, meaning that we are setting a random opacity between 0.5 and 1, meaning 50% opacity and 100% opacity. So some stars can look faint and some of them can look kind of bright. Now the animation duration we're going to set here is going to be math.random times 4 plus 2. Which means we were setting an animation duration to be between 2 and 6 seconds, which we should add 2, not 1. Which again, it would just make it such that some of the stars will start pulsating, which is one of the animations we made, and some will pulsate faster and some will pulsate slower than the others. When this is done, the new stars array will be filled, and we can just set the stars to be equal to the new stars. Perfect. Now I'm gonna create here a use effect. And in this use effect, I'm just going to call the generate stars function. Now, don't forget to put a empty dependency array, or else you're going to run this forever and it's going to break your computer. But now that we have the stars, what we can do is we can apply some class names to this. I'm going to add a class name. I'm going to make it fixed. I'm going to set inset to 0. I'm going to set overflow hidden. I'm going to set pointer events to none. And Z0. Perfect. Now, inside of here, we want to loop through the stars now. So I'm going to say stars.map. And for each star, we're also going to get a key. Or we could just use the ID, to be honest. So I'll actually use the ID for that. We're going to return, actually not curly braces. We're going to return parentheses. So we can just put a div inside of here. And it's actually going to be a self-closing div. Now in this div, we're going to put a key. The key will be a star.id, so all of them are different. Then I'm going to add a class name over here, which is going to be star, which is that class that we defined in our index.css. If I go over here, we'll automatically apply all of these when we say star. So we're adding star to it. Then we want to add... what else? Let me see. Animate, pulse, subtle. So this is the animation that we also created. And for styles, we actually want to apply a style to it, right? We'll do direct inline CSS styling. We want to apply the width, the height, the left, the top, the opacity, and we also want to pass the animation duration, because those are all the things that we kept track of when generating the stars over here, right? So for the width, what we want to do is we actually for most of them, we want to use backticks so we can add some JavaScript inside of a string. The reason for that is because we want to set the size of the width in pixels, but we also want to insert the... Actually, what we could do is to not do that, to make it easier to understand, we can just do like star.size plus pixels. So like this, right? And then I'll do this. I'm going to paste it here, paste it here, paste it here, and here. And for this one, will also be the height will also be star.size plus pixel, because the circles are the same width and height. Then left, instead of using size, we're going to say x. And it's not a pixel, it's a percentage. So I'm going to use percentage for the top as well. For the top, I'm going to use y. And opacity, I'm just going to put the opacity directly. We don't need to like add anything. Then for animation duration, I'll say star.animation duration plus an s, so it's seconds. And we should see that now when I go back to my page. Whoa, it's kind of crazy, right? It shows up with all of the stars automatically. Now, if I go to light mode, obviously the stars disappear because it's not light. Perfect. This looks pretty beautiful. And every time you refresh the page, the stars are different. Great. Now you know how to generate these beautiful looking stars. Now, how do we do the meteors? I know it probably looks a lot complicated. Now that you guys did the stars already, you probably understand a lot more of how to do this kind of animations. For the meteors, it's pretty much the same thing. We're going to copy this thing over here. We're going to put it here. But we're going to create a function called generate meteors. Now, for the meteors, we're also going to create a state. So we're going to say meteors and set meteors. And I'm gonna be honest, meteor is gonna look almost the same. It's gonna have an ID, a size, an X, a Y, but it's not gonna have an opacity. It's gonna have a delay, and we can call this duration, or we could call this just animation duration. It's the same thing. So then on the generate meteors, what we want to do is we want to set the number of meteors, but meteors are kind of big, so I don't want to just set an insane amount. I'm just going to choose an actual amount of meteors I want to have on the screen. I found that with 4 meteors, it looks the best. Then we'll create a new meteors function instead of new stars. It will be the same thing, and we're going to loop through the number of meteors. For each meteor, we're going to do the exact same thing, but the difference is the size, we're going to do 2 instead of 3. The X direction, we're going to do 100, but the Y direction, we want to do 20. So 20%. Then for the delay, not opacity, we want to do times 15. And the animation duration, we want to do 3 plus 3. Now, I'm not explaining what each of these does because I just explained it over here. If you forgot, just go back to that part of the video. But this is what we're assigning to each of them. And then in the end, we're just going to say set meteors to equal to new meteors. I forgot to do this here too. Perfect. Now, we're just going to call the generate meteors function on the use effect. And inside of here, I want to copy the logic we did for the stars. And I want to apply it here for the meteors. We're going to loop through each of the meteors, and we're going to get a meteor for each of them. Now, I'll replace all of this, just like this. And obviously, I also want to replace the opacity with the animation delay. That's the property I want to apply. And the meteor will be just the delay. This stuff over here should be the same. The height should be the same, pretty much the same. But the other difference is the styling of it. So we're going to say meteor and animate meteor, which are the stylings we applied on our index.css. Now, when we go back over here, look at this. It looks like some of the stars are falling, which is kind of crazy. Why are the stars falling? Did I do something wrong here? It kind of looks cool, not gonna lie, but that's not what I wanted to do. It just looks like a bunch of stars are falling. which is not really what I wanted. I wanted meteors. To be honest, I think this looks pretty cool, and maybe I would leave it to this if I were you guys. But I promised you guys those meteors from the intro, and I already know what I did wrong. We basically have to multiply this value times 50. So you'll see we get a bigger one, right? Honestly, this looks pretty good. It's not the one that I had in the intro, but it looks pretty cool. This one is the one that we have to multiply times 3 to make the height be a bit bigger. But I'm gonna be honest, maybe multiply times 2. Yeah, this looks really cool. Yeah, I'll leave it like this. But yeah, you guys got it, right? So this is how we make the meteor. The animation has a different amount of duration. It goes out of sight, and it starts from a diagonal. You could change the angle as well if you wanted to, but obviously all of that is done in our index.css. If you were to change, for example, if I were to go to meteor, and actually it's animate meteor, that's where we do the thing, right? So if I go to meteor over here, if I change this to, I don't know, 60, you'll see that now everything goes in a completely different direction. It goes kind of insane. But we leave it like this so that it actually looks like it's falling. Great. We now have this done, and we can close. Actually, one thing we still have to do with this is the fact that, again, if I open the inspect element over here and I make this into a phone, there's too many stars. There's way too many stars. The meteors are not actually adapting correctly. So we want to actually resize stuff depending on if you're using your phone or if you're using a big screen. So the way we're going to do this actually is on the use effect, we're going to add a resize method. So we're going to create here a function called handle resize. And when there is a handle resize, we want to regenerate the stars. So I'll say generate stars. Generate stars. Now, when is this handle resize function going to be called? Well, we can add an event listener. So add event listener, and we can add a window event listener for resize. So when the window resizes, we call the handle resize function. And since we're handling with a listener, we need to clean it up just in case we unmount the component. So we'll return a function that we'll call window.remove event listener, and we'll obviously remove the resize so we don't have any memory leaks. Perfect. Now you see that we have this amount, right? But then if I resize, now it adapts, right? It's not that clutter of stars, and it looks a lot better. Perfect. Now we are done with this part, and we can start working on the navbar. So for the navbar, I'm going to create a component here called navbar. And inside of here, I want to export const navbar, and I'll just again return a div. I might change that later to a nav, but we'll check that in a second. So I'll actually call the navbar over here. It will auto import, and we'll go to the navbar component. Now, in this navbar component, I want to do the following. I want to create the list of different links we're going to have in the navbar. So I'll create here nav items, and this is going to be just a list with, I need to make this into a const, with objects inside of it representing each link. So the links we're going to have is going to have a name. So for example, the home link, and it's going to have the href, which is what are we linking it to. Now, again, we don't have routes like it auto imported over there from React Router DOM. We have just different parts of the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, whenever I create, for example, a section like the hero section or the about section or the skills and the project sections, the section is going to be engulfed by a div with an ID equal to the name of that section. Because if I made the href of this link over here, for example, hero or about like this, and I set a div with the ID equal to this, when I click on that link, it's going to navigate to that item. And that's something really cool that you can do. So I'm going to copy this over here, and let's make a couple sections. We're going to make a section for the about, skills, projects, and contact. So about, and then about, skills, and then skill, or skills maybe, and then projects, and then projects, and finally we're going to do contact, and then we'll do contact. Perfect. Now for the navbar, we want to set, we want to use a nav over here, set up a div, like I said, and let's add some styling to it. I want to add a class name over here, which is going to be actually, we're going to use the cn function that I created. Now let's import that function. So I'm going to say import cn from @lib@utils, just like this. And in here, I want to add first, I want to make it fixed at the top. I want to make the width of it be the full width of the screen. Z to be 40. I'll set transition, all, and duration 300. Now the second part of it, it is going to depend on if we scrolled through the screen or not. Now, how do we detect if we scrolled? Well, we have to use an event listener. Now, the reason for that is I want to make it into a little cool like glass effect. When we're scrolling, the navbar will become stuck at the top and it will have a transparency to it. So the way we're going to do this is I'm going to create here a state called is scrolled, and set is scrolled. It's going to be a boolean. So use state false. And like I said, we're going to have a use effect here. So use effect. And in this use effect, I want to make it only call once. And I want to set it to be, have a function called handle scroll. Now, if there's any scroll that happens, then this function is going to be called. So if the user scrolls down, it's going to be called. And I want to set is scrolled to be true as long as the scroll y of the window, so the distance in which they scrolled, is greater than the size, the height of the navbar. So they scrolled out of the navbar. And I'm going to set the height to be 10. So if it's greater than 10, this will become true, and we're going to set this state to true. Now to call this whenever the user scrolls down, we have to say window.addEventListener, an event listener for a scroll, and we'll set the handle scroll. Now again, we have to return and clean this up so we don't have any memory leaks. And I'll just do this, but I'll say remove event listener. Perfect. Now we can't really test this. Also, we haven't done anything on the link yet, but we are going to add an is scrolled boolean on the second part of the class name function. This time, we're going to basically say if the user scrolled down, then we want to make the padding y be 3, and we want to blur the background. So I'm going to say bg background divided by 80, and I'll add a backdrop blur of medium size and a shadow xs. Now, if they haven't scrolled, then I'll just set a padding y of 5. Again, we can't really see it happening yet. Inside of this navbar over here, let's add a div, which is going to be a container. So we'll say div, and we'll add a class name here of container. We'll set a display of flex. We'll center stuff vertically to the center, and we'll say justify between. Then below this, I want to add an a tag. So I'll say a, and this is just going to be the logo of my portfolio, right? So this logo is going to be whatever you want to do, but I'm going to add a span here. The span is going to contain another span inside of it, and the first span is going to glow, and I'm going to call it PedroTech, and then the second part of it is going to be portfolio. I only want to glow the PedroTech. That's why we're using spans. Then so to do that, I'm just going to give it a class name of text glow. Remember, we created that class, and we should see it is slightly glowing. But we do want to apply some styling to this. So I'm going to set this to relative. So relative, and I want to set the Z to 10, and then an a tag over here. We're going to add a class name to be text XL, so it's bigger. The font to be bold, the text color to be primary. I want to make it flex, and I want to center it. And now you should see that this is how it looks. One of them glows and the other doesn't. To be honest, I could also make this be text primary. No, text foreground. And yeah, it will be white. And then it switches to black. I think this looks a little bit better. Just my opinion. But yeah, let me go back. And let's also make it such that when I click on this, I want to add an href. So I'll add an href to the a tag, not to the span. And I want to be navigated to the hero section. We don't have the hero section yet, but when we have, it will navigate us there. So now we want to make our actual navbar, right? We did this container part and we did this little part over here with the a tag, but we want to make the actual navbar with the links. Now we're going to have two of them. We're going to have the desktop version and we're going to have the mobile version. So mobile nav. For the desktop, we're going to add a div which is going to loop through the nav items. So nav items.map, and we're going to loop through each of them. And for each item, I want to set, I also want to get a key here. I want to return this actually with parentheses. And let me remove this. Inside of here, I want to add a tag. And I'll render the item name. And you'll see that it will just create the different links, right? But I can't really click on them yet. Now to click on them, I'll just set the href to be equal to the item.href. Also, I'm going to set the key to be equal to key. And finally, we're going to add some class names to this. I'll start with this one. I'm just going to say it's hidden, but on a medium screen, it's going to be display flex. And I'll say space x8 so it appears. Now what this does is if I make it into a smaller screen, it will be hidden. See? But on anything bigger than a medium screen, it will appear and have a display of flex. Now on this, we want to add a class name. The class name is going to be the color of it. So I'm going to say foreground so it adapts, right? Because if I don't put foreground, if I went to this, it would probably be white still. Now here I'm also gonna do foreground divided by 80. I'm gonna add a hover of it and say text primary, then transition, colors, duration, 300. And this is how it should look like. When I hover it, it kind of becomes the primary color, which is purple. And you see that as I click on it, it will navigate us to whatever element has that ID. Great. Now we can do the exact same thing, but for the mobile menu. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it over here. Now for the mobile menu, obviously it's going to be different, right? It's going to be different for a variety of reasons. First of all, it is vertical, not horizontal. And for that reason, I want to put a div around the mobile menu div. And want to add a lot of stylings to this. So we're actually going to add a class name function here as well. And the first I want to do is I want to set it to fixed. Inset to 0, the BG to be background 95, the backdrop blur to be medium as well, and Z to be 40, display to be flex, direction to be flex column, items to be centered, and I want to justify it to the center as well, justify the content to the center. Then on top of that, I'm gonna put a comma, and then I'm going to put transition, all, duration, 300. And on a medium screen, I will make it hidden. Perfect. Now, I want to add more styling to it, but this styling is only if the menu is open or not. Now, to do that, I'm going to create a state over here that is going to keep track of if our menu for mobile is open or not. It's going to be called isMenuOpen. And set is menu open. Perfect. Now, on this state, we're going to deal with setting it to true or false later. But for now, what I want to do is I just want to set is menu open true. Because if it is, then I want to add some styling that is going to set the opacity to be 100 so it shows. And I want to set pointer events to be auto. Now, if it's false, Then I want to hide the menu, so I'll set opacity to 0, and I want to set this to none. Now, obviously, the menu is closed, so it doesn't appear. But if I actually started this to true, we actually haven't applied any of stylings yet, so you won't see anything. Now, we'll change some of the styling inside of this as well. For example, this over here should be pretty much the same, but it's in the vertical direction, so I'm going to set a flex column, and I want to set a space Y instead of a space X. And let's make the text be Excel. Also, I just realized that the reason it didn't appear is because we actually want to set this to a small, right? If I, oh, why did I close it? I'll set this to true so you guys can see. And let's show what it looks like when it goes to mobile. This is how the menu is going to look like, right? Now, if I close this, it's not in mobile anymore, so we can turn it back to false. Now, the items here are pretty much fine, but one thing is on the mobile menu, when I click on the item, I also want to automatically set is menu open to false, just because like I want to get out of the screen, right, to go to your item. So if I were to go to a mobile screen and I set this to true, I want to be able to click on this and it will close the menu and navigate to that item instead of, you know, navigating to the item, but the thing is still open. Now, how do we make it such that we can manually open and close the menu? Well, to do that, we'll have to add a menu button, right? So I'll come over here and I'm going to add a button, which is going to have some icons to it. If the menu is open, we're going to set this to an X button. We can import this from Lucille React, and the X button is going to be of size 24. Then if it's not, we're going to say, we're going to put a menu button, a menu icon, and this size will also be 24. Now we need to close this, and this is the menu. Now I need to put an on click to it. So on click, if we click on it, we just want to toggle through it. So I'll say set is menu open to be the opposite of menu open. Actually, I'll get it from here. So we'll get the current value. So rev, and I'm going to set it equal to not that value. So if it's true, it'll become false. If it's false, it'll become true. You'll see that we can now switch between them, but that's not doing really anything, right? Because we're not really in a mobile menu. Now, before I do that, I want to add some class name to it so we can see it. First of all, it needs to be hidden when the screen is bigger than medium, so it's not there anymore. Second of all, the padding needs to be 2. The text color should be foreground. And Z has to be 50 so we can see it. Now, we'll just test it. We'll open this up. You see that now in a mobile screen that appears. I click on it. Now it's here and I can close it. Perfect. We might also want to put some area label just for accessibility. I'll do that just so you guys get used to it. We're going to say area label. If the menu is open, we're going to say close menu. And if it's not, then we'll say open menu. Perfect. Now you obviously can't see that, but that's how it would work. Great. We now have a lot of the initial setup done for the project. We now can start building the actual core infrastructure of the project. So let's start with the first section, which is going to be the hero section. So we're going to open up here our code and we'll go to our app.jsx. In here we are rendering the home component. So in the home component, we're going to put the main content, right? And for the main content, I'm going to wrap this around with a main tag just so we know. Now, inside of here, we're going to structure it this way. First, we're going to have the hero section, which you'll see will be the first thing that everyone sees when they come to the website. So I'm just going to create a component called hero section. Now, we'll create over here on components, we're going to create a hero section.jsx. And inside of here, I want to just export const hero section. And we'll just return a section. And what we need to make sure is that when we return this section, we need to give an ID that is equal to whatever we put on Navbar. So when we click to on the home page, we navigate to the hero ID. So to actually link that item to this section, we have to write hero as the ID of it. Then we're going to write some class names just to style it. I'm going to make it position relative. I'm going to set the minimum height of the screen. I'm going to say display is flex, and the direction is going to be flex column. I'm also going to align the items to the center, and I'm going to justify the content to the center as well. And I'll set a padding on the X direction to be 4. Now we can come down here, and I'm going to add a div. And on this div, we're going to add a class name. Now on this class name, I'm going to say container max width for Excel. On the margin on the X direction will be auto. The text will be center, and the Z will be 10. Now we'll add another div over here, and this div will contain two sections inside of it. First is going to say hi, I am, and then we're going to have my name, Pedro, and then my last name. Now, the reason we're going to divide them is because we want to add different styling to each of them. So we're going to have this first div over here, which will say a class name will be space on the Y direction to be 6. Then below this, we are going to add an H1 that will encompass our entire first title, right? Now, in this title, like I said, we're going to have 3 different parts of it, and I'll create a span for each of them. Now, the first one is going to say, hi, I'm, and you can obviously divide this in however way you want. But the second one is going to say Pedro, which is my first name, and the other one is going to say Machado, which is my last name. So if I go over here, right now it's broken, and it's broken just because we actually have to import the hero section. So I'm going to import hero section, and we should see that now it is working. Now we don't have any styling, but you can see that this is applied right at the center, and the text does appear in the format that we want. Now in this H1 tag over here, we'll make some styling that will apply to all of them. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to set the height of it, so the size of the text, to be 4XL. You see it's a lot bigger now. Now on the medium screen is going to be text 6XL, and you'll see that it's even bigger. It's just so that we have some size for when it's a big screen and when it's a small screen. Now we'll set the font to be bold since we want it to be very obvious, and then we'll set tracking to be tight. You'll see this is how it looks now. Now what we want to do is we want to change the color of some of the text, and we'll keep some of the other text with the same color. So it's just so we can also have a little bit of animation to it as well. So for the first one, here's what we're going to do. We're going to add a class name. We're actually going to say opacity 0, and we're going to animate this text to appear. So we'll apply the animate fade in animation that we created, and you'll see that when we refresh this, initially it's 0, it doesn't appear, but then it appears inside really quickly through our animation. Now for the class name over here, I'm going to apply text primary, opacity to be 0, and I'll also animate fade in delay 1. Now, why are we doing this? Well, text primary will make it have a purple color, as you can see. And the other animation has a delay of 1, meaning that it is going to appear a little bit after this one, meaning that we can have this sequence, right, where this appears first, then this one, and obviously this one will apply the delay of 2. Now, to do that, we're going to copy this class name. It's pretty much going to be the same. But to be honest, I think the Machado, the last one, is not going to be text primary. It will actually be text gradient. And we'll set a margin left to be 2. And I'll set the delay to be 2 as well. And here's how it's going to look. Perfect. Now we'll come back over here, and we have this first title section of our hero done. Now we want to add a little bit of text as well, like a paragraph below this. So below our H1 over here, I'm going to add a P tag, and I've actually already written a paragraph, and you can obviously write whatever you want, just a little bio about yourself. I try to make it like thematic with how the website looks. It looks like a space. So I said like I create stellar web experiences, whatever. To be honest, just write something that you think would entice some recruiter trying to hire you. Now on the P tag over here, what we're going to do is we're going to say class name. We're going to set the text to large. Well, on a medium screen, we're going to actually set it to Excel. I'm going to also say text muted foreground, max width to XL, margin X to be auto, the opacity to be 0, the animate fade in to actually be the last one, the delay 3. Actually, I think we have a delay 4 as well. So that here's what happens. This appears first and then this appears last, right? Perfect. Now I think there's one last part of it, which is gonna be the button. So I'm actually gonna come over here, I'm gonna add a div, and on this div we're gonna have an A tag, which is gonna kind of act like a button. Here we're gonna say view my work, so it links to all of our projects. To link to projects, we're gonna have a section called projects, so I'm just gonna say that. Now we created a button in our styling over here, which I believe I called cosmic button. Yeah, just because it again applies to the style of this website. So I'm gonna add a class name and I'm just gonna set it to cosmic button, and you'll see that it will look like that button. Now we do want to do one thing though. We want to also apply an animation to this. So I'm actually gonna say opacity 0, and I'm gonna actually apply the 4 for it to appear later. And I want to also apply a padding on the top to be 4. So here's how it happens. First this appears, then this, and then finally the button appears. Great. Now I do want to put a little arrow over here that will kind of have an animation of bouncing. And the reason why I want to do that is to show them that they can scroll down. Right now we don't have anything below this, but this will make it such that they will be able to scroll below. So how do we do that? Well, to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come below this div, and we're going to actually come not just below this div, we're going to go right above the section. So close out all of those divs. I'm going to add another div. This is going to be literally absolutely at the bottom. So we'll actually say the position will be absolute, but we're going to say it's bottom but 8 up, and I'll make it to the middle of the screen, which will be just left half. Then I'm transforming it, negative translate X half as well, display flex, direction flex column, items center, and I'm gonna set the animate to bounce, which is something we created already. Now next to this, I'm going to actually set a span, and this span will say scroll, just to let them know that they can scroll. Right now it's just a text that is bouncing, but we do want to put an arrow below it. So I'm gonna actually say arrow down class name is equal to h5 with 5, so we make it a little bit bigger, and I'll set it actually to be primary, so it's purple. And arrow down, as you can see, we didn't actually import it, but arrow down is a component we're going to import from the icon library that we installed, the Lucid React. So I'm gonna say arrow down from Lucid React, and you should see that this is how it looks. Now I do want to like space this out a little bit more. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to come here to the scroll, to the span, yeah. And in the span, I want to set a class name, which will be text small, text muted foreground, and a margin bottom of 2. And this is how it should look. See, it's a little bit bigger, and yeah, I think this looks pretty good. But now we know that we can scroll down. And perfect. We have now successfully created the hero section of our website. So the next section is going to be the About Me section. So we'll go here. We're going to create the About Me component, and we're going to export const About Me. And I'm just going to return a section for now. Now we're going to import this on the home component. So below the hero section, we're going to import the About Me. And actually, I just noticed something. We should probably call this About section instead of About Me. Just because we call the first one section, so we want to maintain a standard. I'll change this to About section. And I'll change this as well. Perfect. Now, let's go to the About section. In here, I want to pass an ID equal to About. The class name is going to be, we'll put a padding on the Y direction to be 24, a padding on the X direction to be 4, and the position to be relative. Now on the section, I want to add a div. right over here. On this div, we're going to have a container. So we're going to apply the container styling. We'll say margin X to be auto, max width to be 5XL. And on this div, we're going to actually have the h2 tag. So we have a section that will say about me. We want to make the about be white and the me be purple, or whatever color you chose for your text primary. So again, to do that, I'm going to say about, and then I'll apply span to the me. Now the class name for the span, the first one is just going to be the text primary. And you'll see that now, if I scroll down, one of them is white, one of them is the primary color. Now on this H2, I do want to do one thing because they look very small. I'm going to first of all set the size to be 3XL and also 4XL on a bigger screen. So text 4XL, the font to be bold, a margin bottom to be 12, and I want to align the text to center. And this is how it should look like. Perfect. Only if you scroll. I don't want it to appear when you're not scrolling. Now, what I want to do in this section is I want to have over here on the first side over here, I want to have a little bit of the description about me with some buttons, like for me to download, for the user to download my CV and maybe contact me and such. And then on the right side over here, I want to have just a section where it will show like a little bit of some of my traits. So to do that, I want to divide this section into two parts. The first one is I'm going to have a div here, which I'm going to turn it into a grid. So class name grid. I'm going to say that it only has one column. And then MD grid calls 2. And I'm going to set a gap of 12, and I'll align the items to the center. Now the left column, it is going to have the text content, right? It's going to have the part where it says like, oh, I'm a passionate web developer and so on. So that's what we're going to have on that one. The right one is going to talk about the skills. Now for this one, we're going to apply a class name that is going to say space Y6. And inside of here, I'm just going to have an H3 tag that is going to, again, say passionate web developer and tech creator. I don't know. And then below this, I'm going to add a paragraph tag. I already have a little bit of some paragraphs I might want to reuse just for us to, just write whatever. This is not applying to me. Every time I make this resume or portfolio type videos, I never talk about myself because I have my own website. But this is something that I would put about. See, talk a little bit about how many years of experience you have, what you specialize in, what technologies you know, what you're passionate about, and so on. Now for each of them, I want to apply the text muted foreground color. So I'll say class name, text, muted foreground. And I'll do the same for this one. And give some space here. And for this H3 tag, I want to actually add a class name here that will say text to Excel, and I want to make the font be semi-bold so it doesn't affect the actual title. Now this looks pretty good, and you see it's already to the left. On the right is where we have the skills. Now below the second paragraph, we want to put the buttons. So the buttons, they're going to be below this paragraph tag over here. We're going to add a div, and we want to kind of center the buttons. So I'm going to say class name flex. I'm going to say flex column, but on a small screen, it will be flex row. The gap will be 4. The padding top will be 4. And I'll justify them to the center. Now, the first button, which will also not really be a button, it will be an A tag looking like a button. It will take us to the contact section. So href contact, and we'll put a hashtag here. And why is it taking so long for me to click on this? Then we'll also make it be the button, right? So the cosmic button. And this is what we see. Now we have to put a label to it. So the label is just going to be like get in touch. Great. Now the one below this is actually going to take us actually, it's not going to take us anywhere. But if you had a CV, right, I would put the link to your CV over here, so you download it. So you put your CV, a file in your project, and you put a link there. Now I'm gonna say download CV here. I obviously don't have a CV to put here, but feel free to do so as well. So I don't want both of them to be a cosmic button. It's nice to have one look a little bit different. So I'm actually gonna put some styling to this. I'm gonna say padding X6, padding Y2. I'll make it also rounded full to have the full border radius. I'm gonna set a border to be the color primary, text to be primary. I'm gonna set the hover to be BG primary, but just a little bit less. Then I'm gonna say transition, colors, duration, 300. To be honest, this one is a bit big. I just made no background, as you can see. This class name, maybe we should have used a CN over here just to make it a little bit smaller, but whatever. So now we're pretty much done with the left section of the about me. Now the right section has the cards, right? It has the different skills. So I'm gonna set it as a grid. I'm again gonna say grid calls 1, and I'm setting a gap of 6. Now inside of this, I want to add a div which is going to have a gradient border. So class name, gradient border, and a P of 6, so padding of 6, and I'm gonna say card hover. So all of the stylings we created for cards are gonna be applied to this. You see, when we hover it, it grows up a little bit, and we're gonna have 3 of these. So I'm actually gonna copy this, and I'll make 3 of them. Oh, I didn't copy it properly. Wait, let me copy this entire thing, and perfect. Now 3 on top of each other. Now we'll make the first one just so you guys can have an idea of how the other ones will look. But this first one will say div, and in here I'm gonna say class name flex, and then items start, and a gap of 4. Then on this I'm gonna add another div, and this will have a class name of padding of 3. It will be rounded full, and it will be a BG primary of 10. So you see, we're just making this left section over here. So it's a little circle that goes on the left, and we can put an icon inside of it. Now the first one, I'm gonna put an icon for code, right? It's those little brackets next to each other. And we have an icon for that. It's called code. It's from Lucid. It looks like this, as you can see. The white looks nice, but I do want to make it purple because it just matches the theme. I also want to make it height of 6 and width of 6. And I'll say text primary to apply the blue color. And this is how it should look like. Now, again, same thing we're going to do with the other ones. So I'll copy this and I'll paste it here, and this, and I'll paste it here. And you see now all of them have that too, but the icons are going to be different. The first one, we're going to talk more about the code. So like what kind of coding we do. The second one, we'll actually talk a little bit about how we interact with users. So like we're talking about how we work with UI and design and so on. The last one is probably just going to be our work experience, I believe. So I'm going to add a little briefcase just to represent that. Now for the first section over here, after the div with the code, we're going to add another div. And for this div, I'm going to add a class name. It's going to be text left. And below this, we're going to add the h4 tag, and we'll say web development, right? Something related to web development. We'll also add a paragraph tag over here, and I already have some fake information that I want to put. I'll say something like creating responsive websites and web applications with modern frameworks, right? You can go more specific here as well, like list a little bit of your skills, but we have a section for skills, so I wouldn't worry that much about that. Now on the h4 tag over here, I would add a semi-bold tag. So text semi-bold, and I'll also make it a little bit larger. And then for the p tag, I'm gonna make text muted foreground. Nice. And this is how it should look like. Pretty good. I just feel like it's not actually semi-bold. I don't know why. Oh, this should be font. Sorry about that. Yeah, of course it wasn't semi-bold, but yeah, now it is. Now we'll copy this whole thing, and we're gonna put it on both of these. But the text is different. So I actually have the text for them, right? Because I already made this website. So this one is, I'm just gonna say UI, UX design, designing intuitive user interfaces and seamless user experiences. again, just going over each of the sections individually. Now this one over here, I'm going to say a little bit about what I've led all of my projects and so on. And whoa, this isn't how it looks like. What did I do wrong? So, oh, okay. Yeah, of course. I'm going to delete this section over here. Actually going to Command V for both of them. It should go actually below this div over here. But it should be the whole thing, so including the text left, right? Yeah, and now this part is fixed. Sorry about that. Let me fix this part as well. Oh, to fix that, I just have to do this. Yeah, perfect. But it's not web development, right? It's actually gonna be this other one, the UI UX design, and now it looks a lot better. Great. So this is the About Me section. It's actually pretty simple. I guess this section is just some like a little bit annoying to do, but the thing is, it is very essential, obviously. But the cool section to do is going to be the next one, which is the skills section. So we're going to close this up, and we're going to create another section on our components. It's going to be called skills section. This section, we pretty much want to have like a list of all the different skills that we have, and we'll rank them based on how much we actually know for each of them. So for now, I'll just return here a section tag, and on the app on the home, actually not the app, I want to just call it so skill section. Perfect. Now I'm gonna close this up, and we'll actually want to list out all of the skills that we have. So the first thing we need to do is, again, make a list of all the different skills we want to have in our project and the different categories for them. So the way I'm going to structure this is I'm going to have an array called skills. And in this array, I'm going to have an object for each skill. It's going to have a name. So for example, HTML, CSS. It's going to have a level. So how much out of 100 do I feel like I know this skill? Let's say 95. And it was going to have a category. So we're going to have 3 categories, I believe. We're going to have tools, backend, frontend, and probably all is also going to be a category, but all of them are going to apply to it. So category is going to be frontend for HTML and CSS. Now, make one of these for each skill you possibly have. I already made a whole list for this of like example categories, and this is how it looks like, right? We have here for skills JavaScript, React, TypeScript, Tailwind, NextJS. They're all front-end. Back-end, we have Node, Express, Mongo, GraphQL, Postgres. And for tools, I thought of things like Figma, Docker, Git. I would also put AWS stuff for sure. Put like, I don't know, EC2, Lambdas, stuff like that. They're great keywords for when you're trying to apply. But yeah, so make your list and probably come back when you're done with it. Now for the section over here, we're going to have to add an ID of skills. And I'm also going to add a class name of py24, px4. I'll make the position relative, bg secondary divided by 30. And if we click on skills, whoa, now we are down here. We also haven't added anything to the skills, but you see the scroll is working. Now on this div over here, let's add a div, and I'm going to say class name, container, margin X, auto, max W5 Excel. And then down here, I'm going to add an H2 tag, which is going to say my, and then I'm going to add a span of skills. Then on this H2 tag, I'm going to add a class name of text 3XL. On a medium, it's going to be text 4XL. The font is going to be bold, the margin bottom is going to be 12, and the text will be center. And we should see it's similar to the About Me one, but we want to also make the skills be purple. So I'm just going to add a class name, make it text primary. And perfect. Now it is. Now for the skills section, all we have to do now is just actually loop through the categories and filter for them. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing we could do to try doing this is we can have a div which is going to have the skills, right? All the skills being displayed. So I'm going to add a class name here. I'm going to make it into a grid. It will have one column. So grid calls 1. But obviously in a small, it's going to be grid calls 2. And in a large, it's going to be grid calls 3. And a gap of 6 as well. Now below this, I want to apply, I'm going to loop through the skills array and say skills.map. And for each skill, we're also going to get a key. We're going to return a div. Now on this div, I want to pass the key, and we'll make it equal to key. And we'll apply a class name over here, which will make it into a card. We'll say the padding is 6. It is rounded large. The shadow is XS, and it has the card hover effect. Now we can actually see them already because we already have all the list of our skills. So all the skills are being displayed right now and appearing right next to each other. Obviously we didn't put any like text on it, but to actually display the text, what we can do first is we can have a div inside of this, which will have an h3 tag, and it needs to have a closing div. I don't know why it's not closing automatically. Then on here, we're gonna say skill.name to just display the name of the skill. And yeah, you can see all the skills are being displayed. Now I'll make it obviously look a little bit better. Like it's not gonna have children, it's gonna have a class name. It will be text left and a margin bottom of 4. Now the h3 tag is gonna be class name font semi-bold. And it's also going to have a text that is large. Yeah, looks better. Now, why are we actually, I need to explain, why are we putting it to the left over here? Well, because we're gonna have the little loading bar, right? With the level of our skills right below it. Now to make that loading bar, or level bar, we'll have a div over here, which will close. And on this div, I'm gonna apply some class name. I'm gonna say wfull, bg secondary 50, height of 2, rounded full, so it's, you know, the rounded corners, and overflow hidden. It obviously doesn't appear yet, but now on this, inside of this div, we have to add another div, which will account for the level, right? Now again, close this div, and in here, this div, actually this div should probably be self-closing. I'm thinking about it. Yeah, inside of here, I want to put a class name. Make it bg primary, so it's purple, and then we'll say height of 2, rounded full, origin left, and we'll set an animation. So animate, I'm gonna say grow 1.5 seconds, and it's gonna ease out just like this. Now the important part for this is, yeah, it's full, right? It has a full bar, but we want to apply the width of it to depend on the level. Now the way we do this is we set a style. We have to actually apply some inline CSS. Now the style, I'm gonna set the width to be equal, not the window, the width to be equal to, and then I'll apply over here the skill level. So I'll say skill.level plus, and I'll put a percentage sign. So it actually only fills up depending on the percentage. And what we want to do now is we'll actually put the skill level right next to this. So I'll say div, I'll put a span, and I'll say skill.level, and then a percentage sign. Now, why is it breaking? Again, I'm not closing the divs for some reason. I don't want to put it below it. I actually want to put it to the right. So I'll say class name, text right, margin top 1. It stays to the right, but then I want to make the text a bit smaller. So text small and text muted foreground. Nice. So I think this looks a lot better. Obviously, if it's like a very small percentage, then it looks kind of weird, but in general, it looks good. And this is pretty much it for displaying the skills, other than the fact that we're displaying all of the skills no matter the category. So what we want to do is we want to put some buttons over here that will allow us to switch between the categories we want to see and filter the list out based on it. So How do we do that? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to create a state that is going to allow us to choose the category. So we'll use the useState hook over here. So we'll say useState, and we're going to make that into a category selector. Now remember, the categories are either front-end, back-end, tools, or all categories. So all is going to be the default value, where it actually shows all of the different categories. Now we're going to call this active category and set active category. Perfect. Now for the buttons, I'm going to actually, before the skill section, I'm going to add a category filter section. So I'm going to say class name, and then I'm going to say class name display flex. I'm going to also say flex wrap, justify center, a gap of 4, and a margin bottom of 12. Now inside of here, I actually want to loop through the list of categories, which we don't have, so let's make one over here. So const categories is equal to all, front end, back end, and tools. And I'm going to loop through this list. So I'm going to say categories dot map, and for each item in this, we'll have a category and obviously a key. And for each of them, I basically want to render a button with the name of the category. Now I'll also make a key and apply the key over here. This is how it's going to look like, right? So we have the 4 buttons, but we want to apply some styling to it. I'm going to give this a class name, and we're going to say that this has a padding X of 5, a padding Y of 2. It is rounded full. It has some transition, colors, duration, 300, and I'll make it all capitalized. So it says all, front end, back end, and tools. Perfect. Now, I also want to differ if this is the current category or if it isn't. So when you click on the button, it will set the category equal to whatever the category is right now. So I'm going to say on click, I'm going to just call this, and I'm going to say set active category equal to the current category. So we basically just chose whichever one it is, right? Now, if the current category is the correct one, which by the way, I just realized we should probably make this into a CN, right? Because this is going to be a pretty big styling. Did I import CN? No. So let me say import CN from @/lib utils. And where is it? Over here. And then the next part of this function, I want to basically say if active category is equal to the current category, so if the current category is the one that we chose, then I want to set the color of the background to be primary, meaning the category that we chose will have a button that is purple, right? I also set the color of the text to be primary foreground. But if not, then we'll actually make the color be a little bit different. I'm going to say BG secondary, so the secondary color, and I'll reduce the opacity as well. And I'll set the color to be foreground. And I'll even set a hover to set the BG to be secondary. So just like this. And then if we go back over here, you'll see that all of them are just buttons. And when I choose this, it switches between the categories and the color goes along with it. Now it's not filtering through the items, so we definitely need to do that. And for filtering, it's actually not that hard to do that. There is obviously the filter function that we can use for, and we also have the state. So I'm going to actually create an array called filtered skills. I'm going to set it equal to skills.filter. And the filter function will allow us to go through each skill. Now for each skill, I'm going to say if the active category is equal to all, or the skill.category is equal to the active category, then we keep it. So what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to loop through the skills array, and we're going to go through each item and choose which items we want to keep on this new filtered skills array or not. If this condition is true, we keep it. that item. If it's false, we don't keep that item. Now, in what situation would we want to keep an item into this filtered skills array? Well, if the active category is equal to all, we basically want all of the items to be kept, right? Because it's showing all of the categories. But if that's not true, then if the individual skills category is equal to the active category, then we want to keep that. So that's when the filtering happens. So I'm going to copy this, and instead of mapping through the skills, I want to map through the filtered skills. You see that now, depending on what we choose, it only shows the correct one, and when we choose all, it shows every single one of them. Perfect. I would go ahead and add more skills, like I said, just in case you have someone who's kind of nosy and really doesn't understand much about programming. Because if you know all of these skills, I would say you're pretty good to go, right? You don't need to know everything 100%. But you know how some recruiters aren't actually programmers, so maybe they don't understand. They just see a name, a keyword, and they want to automatically just hire someone based on it. So yeah, I would definitely overwrite than underwrite. So yeah, that's it. Now I'm going to go over here. We're done with our skills section, and we're about to go to the two last sections. So the first one is going to be the projects section. This one is pretty cool. Because obviously everyone loves a project. It is a differentiator between getting hired or not. If you do something really cool, then you might get hired because of it. So project section, return div. Perfect. Now we want to import this on the home page. So I'll just say projects section. And this actually shouldn't be a div. It should be a section, right? And this too. Now, similar to what we did over here with the skill section, I want to have here an array called projects, where we create our list of different projects. Now, for ease of looking at it, I think it just looks better. I make it into 3 different projects, but you can have more if you want to. Obviously, I think 6 makes sense as well. It's good because I'm gonna structure this into a grid of 3. So if it's multiples of 3, it would just look better. Now, I also want you guys to have an image for each of the projects. So just take a screenshot of your website to make it look a little better, or make a little cool banner for it. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to make a folder in the public folder over here. You can call it projects. And inside of there, I want you to put some pictures. Now, I already have obviously some pictures from some videos that I have made in the past, right? Some thumbnails are screenshots that I took. This is one of the videos I've made already. It's like for a landing page. So I'm going to use that project as an example. This is for like an AI SaaS that I made for a video. And this is for, I don't even remember what this is. But yeah, so these are all websites that I built and I'll have videos for it. So if you want to check them out, feel free to do so. Now, I put all of them as project 1, project 2, and project 3, but you can call them whatever you want. Now, with this specific section, when we create this list, I want to first give each of the projects an ID. So I'm going to say ID of 1, a title. So for example, the first project is going to be the Edge AI. So the landing page, I'm just going to call it SaaS landing page. I don't know. And then I'm going to give it a description. The description is going to be like a beautiful landing page app using React and Tailwind. I don't even remember if this was what I used for this project, but then I'll put an image, and this is the background image, right? So we put the path to the image. So in this case, since we put the images on the public folder, it just means it's accessible on the URL, right? So we don't actually have to put a direct path. We can just say projects / the name of the project. So project 1. And then we'll give it some tags. So for each project, we can give a list of skills that are applicable to this project. So for example, React. I think this was Tailwind. And I don't know, to be honest. I'll just put Supabase as an example. But I don't think I used any Supabase for that. Now, if you want, you can add a GitHub URL and a demo URL. So a link to the website deployed and a link to the GitHub repository. I'm not going to add it for mine, but feel free to add it to yours. I'm still going to create the buttons to do that. So I'm just putting an empty, like a hashtag over here so that we have something to link to, right? But in this place, you would put the URL to the live version of your website and to the GitHub repository. So people can take a look at your code and see that you know how to write code. So this is what I did for the first project. I'm going to paste the other two projects and I'll be back in a second. Perfect. So I just pasted here the other two projects. They actually don't match at all what the image shows, but you can see that it looks pretty cool. And we made 3 projects, but again, you can make way more than this if you want to. Now for this section, we're going to do like always, we're going to set an ID here of projects, then a class name will be a padding y of 24. So there's some space, padding x of 4, and position will be relative. Now for the section, we're going to add a div, and on this div, let's set the container and margin x of auto and a max width of 5XL. Then inside of this div, we'll add an h2, which will have the title for the section, which as always was going to have that little span. Now this is going to be featured, and then instead of the span, we're going to put projects. Obviously, the span is going to have a class name of text primary to make it purple. Now for the h2, we're also going to add a size to it, so 3XL. On a mixed medium, it's going to be 4XL. And then font bold, margin bottom of 4, and text center. Perfect. Let's see how this looks. And yeah, looks as good as always. Now we're going to add a small paragraph over here. And I'm going to say class name. It's going to be text center. Now a text muted foreground color. Margin bottom of 12. Max W of 2XL. And a margin X of auto. Now the reason why we're doing this is inside of this paragraph, we're going to just like I don't know, like put some like small paragraph saying like, here are some of my recent projects. I thought it just looked a little bit cool. Having a title for a section without anything below it doesn't look good unless you have immediately a bunch of text. But we're not going to have a lot of text because it's going to be the featured projects. We're going to have an actual image right off the bat. So I thought it would be good to add a little bit paragraph, so to also explain what the projects are, right? So I'm going to put a div over here, and this is where we're going to display the projects. So we're going to display them in a grid, right? So we'll say grid, but we'll also say that the amount of columns in a small is going to, or in general, yeah, in a small is going to be 1, so 1 directly, but on a medium is going to be grid calls 2, and on a large is going to be 3, which isn't the case of what we're looking at right now. So it adapts as we close and open our browser window. And I will set a gap of 8, and inside of this, we just want to loop through our project. So if you ended up having more than the amount of projects we put over there, it will show as more, but for us it's just 3. So I'm going to say project key, and we'll loop through it. Now, the way we define this project is we're going to add a div, which, again, it's not self-closing. Now, we'll add a key for this, and we'll add a class name. The good thing is a lot of the styling for this is already done. It's going to be using a card. So I'm going to say group, bg card, rounded large, overflow hidden, shadow XS, and a card hover effect. And you should see that nothing. Why nothing? Did we loop through? Maybe actually we should probably put some stuff inside of it just to be able to see. So for the first, what we're going to do is we're actually going to set the height of an image to be 48. So I'm going to put over here a div, and we're going to put an image inside of this. This is the image banner. We're going to set the height of it to be 48 and the overflow to be hidden. So it feels like it's inside of the card. Now for the image, the source of it is going to be the project.image. And the alt of it is just going to be the project.title, right?
so we make it accessible for people. Now, as you can see, it looks pretty good, but I do want to put some styling to it. I'm gonna say that the width is full, the height is full. It's gonna follow an object cover. This is important. So transition, transform, duration is gonna be 500, and I'm gonna apply a group hover, which will scale to 1:110. So what you'll see is that now it fully covers, and when I hover it, it kind of expands inside of the card, right? It doesn't actually expand outside of it, which would make it look a little bit weird. So I think this looks pretty cool. And below this, I think with the div, the image, we now have to just map through the tags, right? Because we have a list of tags that we want to apply. So what skills took us to make this project. So to do that, I'm actually going to create a div here, which will have a class name of padding6. And we'll have another div inside of here, which is going to have a class name of flex, and then flex wrap, and then a gap of 2 between them, and a margin bottom of 4. Now we'll have to loop through the tags inside of this project. So I'm going to say project.tags.map, and for each of them, I'm actually not even going to apply the key just because we don't really need it in this case. And for the tags, I'm just going to apply a span, so there's no extra styling to it. And I'll just render the actual tag. Let's see how it looks. We do want to put like a little, we're going to make it rounded. So I'll say class name is px2, px2, py of 1, text to be extra small, and the font to be medium. And we do want to make it into a pill. So I'll make the border be fully rounded, and I'll set the background color to be secondary, the text to be secondary foreground. And what this will do is, if you remember what the colors for secondary looks like, is now if we go over here, this is how it looks. I like it like this, but if you wanted to actually make it look, so I could put a border here, right? And it would look like this. This also looks pretty good. It actually is visible because of our BG secondary. If we don't put a border, it is not visible. I'm going to keep it like this, but some people might want it to be a little bit more less visible. What you could do is you can make this by BG primary, and then it will be purple, right? But obviously that looks kind of weird, so you could actually make the opacity be something like 20. This looks pretty good as well. I actually prefer what we had before, which is like this. Now let's go back over here, and after we render the tags, we'll come down here and I'll put an h3 tag that will have the project title. So project.title. For the title, I'm going to apply the following style. I'm going to say text XL, font semi-bold, and margin bottom of 2. And that's it, right? It looks pretty good. Actually, maybe 1. I think it will look too big if we put a margin bottom of 2. Now, below this, I'm going to add a p tag with the description. So project.description. And in the class name here, I'm going to say text muted foreground, text small, and margin bottom 4. Nice, pretty good. Now for the div below this, we want to put the links, right? So we want to put the link to GitHub and a link to our demo. So I'm gonna say div over here, and on this div, we want to say display flex, justify between, items, center, and I'll put another div on here. This div will be, oh, not that. So this div will say display flex as well, space X to be 3. And for each of these, we're going to have an A tag, which is going to be the button, right? One is going to be for the demo. So I'm going to say, actually, I'll put an icon here. We're going to use the external link icon from Lucid, which looks kind of like this, right? And this is to take us to the demo. And we'll have the other one, which is not going to be for the demo. It's going to be for GitHub. And guess what? There's a GitHub icon. So GitHub. from Lucid React, and it looks like this. Perfect. Now let's apply some styling to it. I want to start with this one. I mean, both of them will pretty much be the same. We can actually just put the href first because I actually forgot to do that. I'll say project.demo URL. And then for this one, it won't be demo URL. It's going to be GitHub URL. Now, the styling is going to be like this. We're going to say text foreground. So 80% opacity for the color of it. Then the hover, we're just going to make it become blue, purple. So text primary. Now the transition colors and a duration for it, which will be 300. Now this will be the same for this. So I'll just copy and paste it. And I want to put the following. I want to put a target to be blank. And if you don't know what this does is it just prevents, when you click on this link, I want it to take us to, open another page with the demo, not actually take us out of our website. Obviously, since I don't have a link for that, it just takes us to the same website, but this is what it will do. Now, I just think that the icons are also a bit big, so I'm going to put a size over here to be 20. And I'll do the same with the GitHub one. And this is how it's looking. Now, I'm not sure why it's over here. Also, the padding here seems to not be working. Let me guess why. So if I go over here. Okay, yeah, obviously the padding that we just applied to the whole thing, I started accidentally putting it below it. So this should be the right way to do it. We now should have a little bit of padding, and it's great. So this appears over here. This applies the padding on the X direction, and it seems to work. Now, we're pretty much done with this section. What we have to do now is we just have to add a button down here at the bottom that will actually link us to the overall GitHub account that we have. So not just the individual repositories, but a link to our general GitHub. So to do that, I'm going to come below this div, so the div that closes our projects loop. And inside of here, I want to add another div, which will have a class name of text center and a margin top of 12 to give some space. And I'll make an A tag to represent a button, and it will say check out or check my GitHub. And I'll put an arrow right icon, which will have a size of 16 probably. Yeah. Why is it here? Oh yeah, let's just apply some styling to it. So for the A tag, I'm going to apply some styling. I'm going to make the cosmic button, so the button looks nice and purple. But also, I need to make the width fit, right? And I also need to make the display flex, and I'll center everything. Let's see if that fixes. Yeah, it does. But I also want to make the margin X to auto. Nice. And let's put a gap of 2. Perfect. Okay, nice. So this is the styling I want to apply for this. And I do want to put an href. Here you put something like github.com/ and this is my actual GitHub account. Now, I also want to put a target blank. And I think that's the URL to my GitHub account. I'm not sure. Yeah, we definitely, that doesn't work because we do want to put HTTPS and then, nice. It actually takes me to my GitHub account. So yeah, so here's what you would put. And as you can see, as we click on each of the items, it does take us in a nice little scroll to all of the different sections. Perfect. Now we are at the last section, which is the contacts section. Now in the contact section, we're going to have two parts of it. We're going to have a part which is going to be for the just information about us, general information. And we're going to have one that is going to be about like an actual form that we can use to send emails. Now for the first section, we're going to export const contact section. And we'll just return a section tag here as well. Now we'll come to our home tag again, and we're going to call the contact section, which is the last one. Then we'll go to our contact section over here. So to do this, I'm going to add here a class name. It's going to be PY24, so we have a padding on the y direction of 24 pixels, then PX of 4, then position relative, and BG secondary 30. Now, I forgot, I need to put an ID here. The ID is going to be the contact, right? Because this is the contact section. Now, over here, we're going to start with the title, which at this point, you guys might be used to it. We're going to write something like a get in, and then we're going to put a span. Get in touch, right? Now, for the span, we're going to say class name text primary. And on this H2, we're going to say text 3XL. Then on a medium, text 4XL. Font bold, margin bottom 4, and text center. I also just noticed we should probably wrap this around with a div as well to make the container, right, that we created for all of the sections. So I'll say container, max to be auto, so we center, and max w 5XL. Great. Yeah, so it looks pretty good. Now, below this, we want to add a paragraph, and we've been doing this for all of the sections. We can even copy from one of the sections. This section doesn't have the same styling, so I'll just write it actually manually. We're going to say text center, text muted foreground, margin bottom of 12, max width 2XL, MX auto, so we center. Now on this paragraph, I'm going to put something that is going to entice them to contact me. So like, have a project in mind or want to collaborate, feel free to reach out. I'm always open to discussing new opportunities. Then I'll have a div over here, which is going to have a grid structure. So grid, then grid calls 1, and grid calls 2, a gap of 11. Let's make it 12 actually. And yeah, so we'll give some space there. Now below this, what I want to do is I want to have the first, which is going to be the contact information. So it's going to be a class name with space y8. And below this, we're going to have a h3 tag, which is going to say the title for this section. So contact information. Then I'll apply a class name here, which will be text 2XL, font semi-bold, margin bottom 6. Now for this section, I'm going to add a div over here. It is going to be class name space y6 and justify center. Then on this div, we're going to have another div, which is going to be a display flex, and items start, and a space x of 4. Now again, inside of this div, we're going to have another div, which is going to be class name p3, so padding 3, rounded full, bg primary, so 10, so it's a 10 opacity, 10% of the opacity of the purple, and we'll just put a mail icon over here that we can get from Lucid. And this is how it's going to look like, right? We're going to have one of these for a mail, the phone number, and our location. Now, I feel like the is 10 enough? I'm thinking about this. It is, but I can also make the text here be primary, right? I can set the height to be 6, the width to be 6, and the text to be primary. And then it will look kind of purple. Yeah. Now, next to this mail, we want to add another div, which is going to be for, actually, let's not put in any class names on this. The styling will be pretty simple. We're just going to have a h4 tag that will say email. And then we're going to have an a tag, which will actually send us an email. So the href of this, on this a tag, is going to be a mail to href. So mail to, and then you put your email here, like hello@gmail.com, right? And then when you click on this, it will actually take the person to email you. Now, we do want to make this be a font medium. So font medium. And then for this link, let's just make a class name. We'll say text muted foreground hover, it'll become primary. And transition colors. Perfect. Now, this is the perfect, wait, why is it saying email? No, it should be the email that I put over here. Sorry about that. So this is how it should look like. Did I not save this? I didn't. It should have the email and then the actual email information right below it. Now, this is one section. We want another section for the phone number, right? So I'll copy this over here. I believe it's up to this, and then I'll put it 2 more times. Now, the first time over here is going to be for phone. So I'm just going to say phone, and I'll change this to some phone number, like +1, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. I don't know. That looks like a phone number, right? Now, we can actually also initiate a call if we use the tail link in the href section for a link. Now, we do have to put the number here, so I'll put +1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Then what I want to do is I want to change the icon of this to the phone icon. And this is how it's going to look like. Perfect. Now, finally, we want to put the location. So the icon is going to be the map pin icon. And we'll change this to location. And we'll change this to whatever location you live in. I obviously live on Vancouver, BC. I say obviously, but obviously not. Maybe you don't know me. So I'll put Canada over here. And yeah, this is the location where you live. Now, obviously, don't put your actual location, right? Oh, yeah. Actually, let's change our href over here. We don't need an href for this link, because what are you even going to do when you click on this? So perfect. We're pretty much done with this contact information section. I just want to add some icons and links for you to be able to connect. So like put your social media if you want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to here. We go 3, and then right here, I'm going to put another div. And for the section, the div, we'll just put it below the current section by putting a padding on top of 8. And I want to put an h4 tag over here, which will say connect with me. And then below this, I want to put a div that is going to list out all of the different links. So I'll say flex over here, display a flex. I'm going to put a space on the x direction of 4, and I'll justify stuff center. Now for this, I'll also say font medium and a margin bottom of 4. And the links, I'm just going to put the icons from Lucid. So I'm going to say, actually I'll put an A tag right around one of them. And the first one is going to be for LinkedIn. So I'll say LinkedIn. That's an icon. Let me see if it appears. Yeah, it does. Why is it deprecated? It doesn't seem like it's an issue. But yeah, we'll have that one. Then we'll have Twitter, Instagram, and then maybe Facebook. I don't even know. We'll do Twitter. Oh, we do Twitch. Let's go. I work for Twitch. So nice to have a promotion here. So Twitch, let's see how it looks. It looks pretty good. And here, obviously, you just put an href to the link to your social media. I'm not going to link mine. They're already in the description, and you can check them out. But yeah, so now when you click on them, it will take you to that page. If you want, you can also add a target of blank on them, which again will just open that link outside of your website, so you don't miss out on users, because now they're wasting time exploring your Instagram account. So perfect. Now what we want to do is we're gonna come over here and we're gonna go down to 3 more, and we'll write the second part of this section, which is the contact form. So to do that, I'm gonna put a div over here, and this contact form is gonna have a BG card as a class name. So BG card. It'll be a padding of 8, and we'll say it's rounded large. I don't want to make it full, and shadow XS. Now below this, I want to add an H3 tag that will say send a message. Now in this class name, we're going to have text 2XL, font semi bold, and margin bottom 6. Now below this, we're going to have a form. Now in this form is where we want to put the different sections for sending a message to you. Now we're going to put a class name here of space y6. And inside of this form, I want to divide it into 3 sections. The first one is your email, or your name, sorry. So I'll put a label, and this label will say your name. But I also want to put an HTML form, which, if you don't know what that does, is it links to a specific input, which we're going to create right below this. It's going to be an input, and this input is going to be with a type of text. It will have an ID of name. It will have a value of name, and we're going to make it required. Now I want to also put some styling to it, so I'll say class name, and for the class name, we're going to say W full, so they go for the full range, padding X of 4, padding Y of 3, rounded MD, border input, BG of background, and I want to put some effects when you focus. Mostly, I want to make the outline be hidden so that little annoying blue thing gets away. Also, when you focus, I want to apply the ring 2 color, remember? And focus, we're going to apply also ring primary, so it's purple. Now, I also want to put a placeholder here, and I'll just say Pedro Machado as like an example. So this is how it looks like when I hover it. It shouldn't have that that thing applied. So I wrote this wrong, right? So we want to hide the outline. We want to unfocus. When we focus, it doesn't have that annoying effect. Now we also want to put some styling to the send a message and to the name. Now we already applied to the send of message, but to your name, what we want to do is we want to say block, text small, font medium, and a margin bottom of 2. Perfect. Now the input is okay, pretty much okay with it. The other ones are going to be also very similar. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to replace it twice. And for the second one, right, this one is going to change to your email. This is going to change to email. This is going to change to email. The name is going to change to email as well. And the type is going to change to email as well. So yeah, so we can actually put an email in here. Now I also want to, what I want to do with this, I want to change this placeholder to be something like john@gmail.com. And the last thing is for the last section over here, I want to change this to a message. So it's the actual message you're writing. I'm going to change this to your message. Also the input here, it's not going to be an input. It's actually going to be a text area. We don't need to put a type for this. The ID is going to be message, message as well. And we're going to make it a bit different. So let me see if we're actually going to make it a bit different. No, we're not actually. I think this should be fine. The only thing I want to also do is I want to prohibit them from resizing this, from allowing them to resize this. So I'll put resize none, because then they won't be able to, like, change the value of this. So perfect. Now the placeholder, it will say like, hello, I'd like to talk about, and then 3 dots. Yeah, so now it kind of matches better. Perfect. Now we're going to have a button, right? So below this div over here, we're going to have a button to submit this form. And I'm going to make this button be of type submit. Then for class name, I'm basically going to apply the cn function over here. So let's import, again, import cn from @-lib/utils. Then the cn function is just because we're going to apply some conditioning to this while we're sending. So we're going to say like cosmic button. That's the first one, right? So it's purple. Then we're going to say w full, like width full, display of flex, items center, justify center, and a gap of 2. Now the second thing we want to do is the condition. So for the condition, we actually need to know when we are submitting this form and when we are not. So I'm going to put here just as a label the send icon. We'll set the size of this icon to 16, and this is how it's going to look like, right? Just to be able to send the message. I obviously also want to put here a text. For now, just say send message, but the text will also change as we are submitting the form. Now, how do we handle that? Well, I want to point something out to you guys. If you want to submit an actual message and email it to you, you'll have to use some sort of email API. I have a video where I've built a portfolio similar to this one, but I do think this one looks a little bit better. But that video, I built a portfolio and I show you guys how to use email.js. Some of you guys complained that I was using email.js. So I'm not going to include it in this video, but if you want to learn how to set up that email thing, you can very easily do that with email.js. I'll link that tutorial in the description. And right now we're just going to mock sending this email, but that's the thing. If you want to actually send an email, you'll probably have to pay to do that, right? So if you want to add a section like this, people are paying to actually set that up. And there are very, very cheap options, including the one that I mentioned, email.js. So I'll also put a link to email.js in the description if you want to do that. So in this video, all I'm going to do with this is when you submit the form, and to be honest, I don't think this is a problem. So if you submit the form, they also have your email, right? So if they want to submit it through the website, that's whatever. So I'm going to put handle submit over here, and we're going to have the event. This is the function that will be called when we submit the form. What I'm going to do is I'm going to prevent default, right? So it doesn't refresh the website. Then I want to actually set a timeout of a few seconds to kind of mock the delay of sending the message. Now the timeout is going to be of 1500, so it's not also that long. It's just 1.5 seconds. And what I want to do is I want to use this cool library from this cool UI library that is going to send a toaster. So if you remember, we installed Radix UI / React Toast, right? We never used it. So here is the time where we're going to use it. So the first thing we want to do to actually set up toasting is we need to import the toaster component. Now, to do that, we have to install the toaster component. Now, I have here the toaster component, and the toaster component, you have to download it and add it directly into your project. That's how the library works. So if you want to have access to this component, again, the link for it will be in the description. But the way you set it up is you create a UI folder and you just paste it over here. Actually, I just realized I already had a UI folder copied. So this is how it's going to look like, right? So UI. And there's going to be 2 components inside of this. One of them seems to be TSX. I'm just going to change it to JSX. So it's good to go. So yeah, these are the 2 components. I didn't build these games with the library, but again, for you to have access to them, you do have to install it. So if you want to just get it really quickly, go into the description and grab them and just put it inside of a UI folder inside of your components folder. Then what we want to do is we want to go to our app.jsx, and inside of here, I want to call the toaster component that we have right above the browser router. So I need to import that. I'm going to say import toaster, and I'll say from @/components /UI /toaster. I just need to make sure that we are actually passing that component. So we have, right, UI toaster. Yeah, we are exporting this component here. Now we also have to have this hook, which again, I didn't actually create, but it comes with the library as well. And if you want to do that, we're going to create here a folder called the hooks folder. Now I'm just going to paste that hook over here. It's called the use toast hook. And whenever we want to apply any toasting, it comes directly from this. Now I'm going to turn it into JS because originally it was. Now I already have the hook copied over here. We're going to create a file called usetoast.js, and I'll just paste the code from that hook. Again, I didn't make this hook. This was generated through the library. And now we have that set up. What we can do is in our contact section over here, we want to use that hook to have access to the toasting. So I'm going to say const toast is equal to use toast. And again, we have to import that. So we're going to say import use toast from at dash. Let me see where it is. It's hooks, right? So ash hooks use toast. Perfect. We should get back a toast. And now what this does is when you want to emit a toaster, you just come over here, you call the toast function, and you pass some information. Like, for example, what is the title of the toast? Which will say something like message sent, an exclamation mark, and then we'll put a description, right? So something like, let me see. I hate when it autocompletes incorrectly, but yeah. Thank you for your message. I'll get back to you soon. So you'll see that if we pass this as an onSubmit to the form, let's go down to the form, pass this as an onSubmit, then why is it giving us an error? I'm gonna debug this and let's see why is it happening. Oh, does it think it doesn't exist? Did I make the file right? It's hooks usetoast.js. This should be right. Oh, so for some reason, I don't know why it was bugging. I literally just killed the terminal and ran the server again. And it seems to have worked because if I come over here, we can now go down and let's test this out. So in the name, I'll just put Pedro Machado. I'll put an email here like pedro@pedrotech.co, which is my email. And I'll just write whatever here. And when we click this, it should wait 1.5 seconds and then a toaster should appear at the bottom. So this is pretty much it. The only things left would be to have the submitting state, right? So if I want to keep track of if the form is submitting, I can make a is submitting state and then set is submitting. And this will be a state that will be a Boolean, so it'll start as false. And what this will do is, to keep track if we're submitting or not, we set the is submitting to true right before the timeout, right before we send the email, and then we set it to false after. That's all we do. And obviously for the 1.5 seconds, it will be submitting. And that means that what we can do is we can make the submit button to the form be disabled, right? We can make this button be disabled while it's submitting. So if it's not submitting, if it is submitting, we want to disable it. And also one thing we can do is we can actually change the label of it to say something like this. We can say when it's not submitting, it will say send a message, but if it's submitting, it will say sending. And all that's, oh wait, I just noticed this should be message, right? And what this will do is if I come over here, right, in the is submitting, we are submitting it to true right before we send the request. Now we're submitting it to false after it's done. And actually, we don't put it over here. We have to put it inside of this. So inside of the toast, right? What happens after? And you'll see that if I were to come over here and I were to write something, right? I'll put a random email over here, gmail.com. And this as well. You'll see that for the 1.5 seconds, now this is disabled and it's saying sending, and then it appears with our toaster. So perfect. This is pretty much it. We do just want to add a small footer, but then this website will be done. Again, just want to emphasize this. If you want to learn how to actually send the contact information, just go to my other video. I didn't include this video because some people complained about that, but I'm making it very clear that you probably have to pay to do that. So now what I want to do is I want to add a footer. And to add a footer, I'm going to go to our home page, right? Where is it? It's the page's home. And below the main over here, right, where we set footer, I'm going to call the footer component. Now the footer component, we're going to create it. So we'll say footer.jsx. And in here, I want to export const footer. And we're going to say return. And I'll return an actual footer tag. Now inside of it, I just want to put two things. The first one is just the copyright label. So If you don't know what the copyright label is, you put your like the little copyright icon, which you can actually get it directly by adding this Unicode icon. Then you put the current date. So to get the current date, you say new date, and then you say dot get full year. And then we now have those two. Why is it erroring? Oh, yeah. This, we need to import it again. Perfect. Now, if we go to the bottom over here, you should see that somewhere, yeah, it says copyright and then 2025. And what we want to do with this is we want to also say the name of their website. So PedroTech.co, something like that. And you put all rights reserved, which I don't even know what that should do related to the law. I don't know why, but every website has this. So this is what it should say. Now, if you want your footer to be a little bit better, we can spruce this up. So what I can do is I can actually add some styling to it. So I'll put a padding Y of 12, padding X of 4, a BG card, so it has a different color, position relative, border T, so border top, and the border top, we have a color equal to the border that we created. Margin top will be 12, padding top will be 8, display will be flex, flex wrap, justify between, and items center. Now, for the p tag over here, I'm just going to add a class name, which will be text small, text muted foreground. And what I want to also do is this will just align it to the side over here. I want to put a little button that when you click on it, it will scroll all the way to the top. So to do that, I'm going to put button over here, and I'm going to, actually, we don't even need to add a button for this, right? We just have to put an A tag and link it to the hero section. Let me see if this will work. So if I link it to hero and I just put like an arrow up icon, so arrow up, let's see. Yeah, it just scrolls all the way to the top. Perfect. We don't even have to make a button for that. Now I can still add some class names to this, like put a padding 2. I'll make it rounded full, a BG primary with 10% opacity. A hover will just make the opacity grow a little bit more to 20. Now this has to be BG, not PG. And then finally, I'll just make the color be purple and the transition be colors. This, it's what it should look like, and it still works. Perfect. So this is pretty much it. I'll just put the size of this to be a little bit bigger, size of 20. This is pretty much it for making the website. I want to know what you guys think. Would you guys like it? Would you guys use this for your own portfolio? I think, if anything, this website is pretty good for you to learn and practice your React and your Tailwind skills, especially Tailwind. But as you can see, it is fully functional with the exception of the send a message stuff, which again, you can check the link in the description. Now, I'm going to show you guys how to very, very, very easily deploy this to Vercel. I also have a video to deploy this to GitHub pages if you're interested in that, but I prefer to deploy it to Vercel. I think it's just easier. So the way we're going to do that is I need to first actually push this code into my GitHub, into a repository. Now Vercel is going to connect to our GitHub account and deploy that GitHub repository. And every time you make any changes to that GitHub repository, by, for example, pushing code and so on, Vercel will actually trigger a redeployment to put live those changes. So what I want to do is I want to go to my GitHub account, and now I'll just click new over here, and I'm going to give a new repository name. I'm going to say beautiful Tailwind, React Tailwind portfolio, something like this. I'll make it public. If you guys could give a like on this repo, would really appreciate it. Also, this is the repo that I put in the description for you guys to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up a new terminal over here. I'm going to say git init, sorry. We need to initialize a repository. Then I'm going to say git add dot, and then I'll just paste all that code that I just copied, and this will beautifully paste everything and push it to this repo in my GitHub account. Now, if I wait a bit, it will push all the code, and now all the code will be here. Now, we want to go to Vercel PedroTech.com, and you want to create an account. I already have an account, obviously, and if you want to create an account, I highly recommend you create it with your GitHub account so you connect them. Now I'm going to log into my account and I'll be back in a second. So as you can see, I'm logged into an account over here. I'm going to click on new and then project. And immediately when you try to deploy something to Vercel, all of your GitHub repositories, public and private, will appear over here. So you see the ones we just pushed, the beautiful React Tailwind portfolio. It will appear here. It recognizes that it's a Vite app, and I'll just click import. What this will do is it will create the project for us. I'm going to keep it the same name, same framework, and so on. If you have environment variables, you can put them over here so they actually work in production. But obviously for this tutorial, we don't have any of that. All we have to do is just click deploy, and hopefully everything will go smoothly without any build errors. But if we have any errors on the way, I'll be here to let you guys know how to fix it. So I'll be back in a second with either a deployment or an error. It took literally 2 seconds, and no, there was no errors. So let's come over here, continue to dashboard. This is now the dashboard for our project. The link to our project is over here. If I click on visit, this is our project. It is beautiful. Let me put it in dark mode so we can actually see it. By the way, you can go to this link. Maybe if I've taken it down already, just so I can save some free tier Vercel projects for this account. That would be good. But yeah, so this is the project fully deployed. There's dark and there's light mode, and everything seems to be working perfectly. So this is basically it. Really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like down below and comment what you want to see next. Subscribe because I'm posting every single week, and I just released my newly released ReactJS course from beginner to advanced. If you want to check it out, click the link in the description. I'm really proud of the course. I'm constantly adding to that course. Just this week, I added a new module to it. So I'm constantly updating that course. I don't want to make a new React course. I don't want to make an updated React course. I want to just keep updating this one specifically. And once you join, you have it for life. So that's the thing. I think you guys will really enjoy it. And if you like the way I teach React, feel free to check the link in the description. Again, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like down below, and I see you guys next time.